Listening is an essential component in learning any language, and when it comes to mastering English, its importance cannot be overstated. Many learners focus on reading, writing, and speaking, but they often underestimate the role of listening. However, listening is the gateway to understanding and internalizing the nuances of the language. It's through active listening that learners develop a deeper comprehension of vocabulary, pronunciation, intonation, rhythm, and the natural flow of English conversation. Without effective listening skills, learners may struggle to grasp the context of spoken English, making communication challenging and hindering overall fluency when learning English. Listening allows you to hear how words are pronounced and how sentences are constructed in real time. This exposure is crucial for developing an intuitive understanding of the language. English, like many other languages, has rules of pronunciation that aren't always reflected in the spelling of words. Consider words like though, through, and tough, which all look similar but are pronounced quite differently. Through listening, learners can identify the correct pronunciation of these tricky words and internalize them for future use. This helps them avoid common pitfalls that arise from relying solely on reading and writing. Moreover, listening is vital because language is about communication. And communication is a two-way street. Listening allows learners to engage in meaningful interactions and participate in conversations. By listening to native speakers or fluent English users, learners can grasp how sentences are formed, the nuances of grammar in spoken language, and the contextual use of words and phrases. For example, textbook English may teach formal grammar, but real-life conversations often include contractions, idioms, and colloquial expressions that are crucial for fluency but are not always found in written language. Another critical reason why listening is essential to learning English is that it exposes learners to various accents, dialects, and styles of speech. English is a global language spoken by millions of people with different accents: British, American, Australian, Indian, South African, and many more. Each accent has its unique sound patterns, pronunciation quirks, and vocabulary usage. Without consistent listening practice, learners may find it difficult to understand different varieties of English. Exposure to a range of accents through listening to podcasts, radio, television shows, or conversations ensures that learners become adaptable and flexible in understanding the language. Regardless of how it's spoken, listening also helps learners understand the rhythm and intonation of English. Every language has its natural rhythm, and English is no different. Sentences rise and fall in pitch depending on the speaker's emotions, intent, or the structure of the sentence. For example, questions in English often end on a higher pitch, while statements may end on a lower one. These subtle cues are difficult to pick up through reading alone and can only be fully understood through listening. Mastering intonation and rhythm not only makes learners sound more natural when speaking English but also helps them comprehend the emotions or intentions behind the words of others. In addition, listening plays a significant role in developing better speaking skills. Speaking and listening are intertwined. After all, a conversation is a dialogue, not a monologue. By listening to how native speakers form their sentences, learners can imitate and practice speaking more naturally. For instance, listening to native speakers helps learners understand when to pause, how to emphasize certain words for effect, and how to structure sentences in a way that sounds fluent and natural. Mimicking what they hear also improves their pronunciation and confidence in speaking English. In essence, listening provides the foundation upon which strong speaking skills are built. Listening to English content also helps learners develop a feel for grammatical structures. While grammar books are useful for learning the rules, listening helps learners see how those rules are applied in everyday communication. Often, spoken English features grammatical shortcuts or patterns that are not covered in formal lessons. Through listening, learners can understand these patterns and apply them in their own speech without overthinking the technical aspects of grammar. This allows for a more fluid and intuitive use of the language, rather than mechanically following grammar rules. Moreover, in the digital age, access to English audio content is easier than ever. From podcasts and YouTube videos to audiobooks and language apps, learners can immerse themselves in English listening practice at any time. This access to a wide variety of authentic English content accelerates the learning process. With so much material available, learners can tailor their listening practice to their interests, whether it's listening to news, entertainment, educational content, or interviews. The key is to engage with the language consistently, as regular exposure sharpens both listening and overall language skills. In conclusion, listening is an indispensable part of learning English. It's through listening that learners improve their pronunciation, grasp the nuances of grammar, and develop the ability to understand different accents and speech patterns. Listening provides exposure to the natural rhythm and flow of the language, helping learners sound more fluent and authentic in their communication. Additionally, it enhances vocabulary retention and improves comprehension, enabling learners to participate in conversations with greater ease and confidence. Therefore, if you are learning English, making listening a core part of your practice will significantly enhance your proficiency and accelerate your journey to fluency. Improving listening skills in English requires consistent practice, active engagement, and a variety of techniques to expose yourself to the language. Here are several effective strategies to help you boost your English listening skills. 1. Listen to a variety of sources. To become better at understanding English, it's essential to expose yourself to a range of different sources. Each source may present new accents, vocabularies, and speaking styles, helping you become more adaptable. Podcasts and audiobooks. These are great tools for language learners because they often provide clear, structured language. Find podcasts that interest you, news, storytelling, education, etc., or listen to audiobooks in English. TV shows and movies. Watching English language shows or films exposes you to real-world, conversational English. Try using subtitles at first, and gradually reduce them as you become more comfortable. YouTube channels. Many YouTube creators focus on language learning or general content in English. Watching native speakers talk about a variety of topics can help improve your comprehension skills. 2. Practice active listening. Active listening means fully focusing on the speaker and trying to understand both the content and the nuances of what's being said. To practice active listening, focus on the main ideas. Instead of trying to understand every single word, aim to grasp the main ideas and key points of what you're listening to. This will improve your comprehension over time. Pause and repeat. When watching videos or listening to podcasts, pause frequently to review what you've heard. Rewind if necessary to repeat certain phrases until you feel comfortable with them. Take notes. Write down unfamiliar words, phrases, or sentences. Afterward, look them up and practice using them. 3. Shadowing. Shadowing is a language learning technique where you listen to a speaker and try to repeat exactly what they are saying. This method helps you improve both listening and speaking skills at the same time. Choose short audio clips. Start with manageable content such as short dialogues, speeches, or excerpts from podcasts. Mimic the speaker's intonation and rhythm. While shadowing, pay attention not just to the words but also to how the speaker is saying them. Intonation, stress, and rhythm are crucial in English. 4. Use English listening apps. Several apps are designed specifically to help learners improve their listening skills in English. These apps often provide graded listening exercises, quizzes, and interactive content. BBC Learning English. This app provides listening exercises for various levels, along with vocabulary explanations and transcripts. Duolingo and Memrise. While primarily known for teaching vocabulary, these apps have listening exercises that help reinforce your comprehension. 5. Watch with subtitles. Then without, subtitles can be an excellent aid in the early stages of improving your listening. However, As you progress, it's essential to challenge yourself by watching content without subtitles. First pass with subtitles. Begin by watching a video or show with English subtitles to help you associate the spoken words with their written form. Second pass without subtitles. Once you feel more confident, re-watch the same material without subtitles to test your understanding. You'll likely notice a significant improvement. 6. Engage in real conversations. Listening in real-life conversations is one of the best ways to develop listening skills. Conversations force you to process information in real time, helping you improve both comprehension and response time. Language exchange programs, platforms like Tandem or HelloTalk allow you to find native English speakers with whom you can practice language exchange either in person or online. Join English speaking clubs. Many communities, schools, and online platforms offer English conversation clubs. These are great opportunities to practice listening to English speakers in a supportive environment. 7. Listen to English music. Listening to English music can make language learning fun and engaging. Pay attention to the lyrics, and try to follow along with the songs. Read the lyrics, find the lyrics to songs you enjoy and sing along. This helps reinforce pronunciation and introduces new vocabulary in a natural context. Analyze the meaning. After listening to a song, think about what the lyrics mean. This can help with comprehension, especially for figurative language or idiomatic expressions used in the songs. 8. Focus on pronunciation patterns. English has a variety of pronunciation quirks, including stress patterns, connected speech, and reductions, e.g., going to, becoming, gonna. By focusing on these aspects, you'll better understand native speakers and improve your overall listening skills. Listen for stressed words. In English, important words, like nouns and verbs, are typically stressed, while smaller words, like articles or prepositions, are unstressed. Paying attention to this pattern will help you catch the essential parts of a conversation. Connected speech. Native speakers often link words together, making it hard for learners to distinguish individual words. Listen carefully for how words are connected, and practice doing the same in your speech. 9. Use transcripts. Many podcasts, audiobooks, and videos come with transcripts. Reading along with the transcript as you listen helps reinforce your understanding of the words and phrases being spoken. Listen first, then read. Try listening to an audio clip once without reading the transcript, and see how much you can understand. Then, read the transcript to fill in the gaps and check your comprehension. 10. Be patient and consistent. Improving listening skills takes time, and it's important to stay patient and persistent. Make listening practice a daily habit, even if it's just for a few minutes. Daily practice, consistency is key. Set aside a few minutes every day to listen to something in English. It could be the news, a podcast, or even a conversation with a friend. Gradually increase the difficulty. Start with content that's easier for you to understand, e.g., beginner podcasts or children's shows, then move on to more complex content like news reports, interviews, and fast-paced movies. The time it takes to improve your English listening skills depends on several factors, including your current level of proficiency, the amount of time you dedicate to practice, the methods you use, and your exposure to the language. There isn't a fixed timeline, but here are some general considerations. 1. Current proficiency level. Beginner. If you're starting from scratch, it may take a few months to develop a basic understanding of spoken English. You'll likely begin by recognizing common words and phrases before being able to follow simple conversations. Intermediate. If you already have a foundation, improvement can be faster, often within 2 to 3 months of regular practice. At this stage, you may understand more conversational English, but may still struggle with fast speech or unfamiliar accents. Advanced. At an advanced level, refining your listening skills to understand different accents, slang, and complex dialogues can take several months of exposure, depending on how often you practice. 2. Amount of time dedicated. Daily practice. 1 to 2 hours per day. Consistent daily practice can lead to noticeable improvement within a few months. For example, listening to English content for an hour each day, combined with active listening techniques, can rapidly boost your comprehension. Less frequent practice, 1 to 2 hours per week. If you practice less frequently, it may take longer, perhaps 6 to 12 months, to see substantial progress. Regularity is key, so spreading out the practice across the week is more effective than cramming. 3. Methods and tools used. The strategies and tools you use to practice listening also impact how quickly you improve. Active listening, engaging actively by taking notes, shadowing, or repeating can accelerate improvement. Variety of sources. Exposing yourself to diverse content like podcasts, movies, and conversations ensures that you don't just learn one type of English but become adaptable. Language immersion. Full immersion, such as living in an English-speaking environment or consistently surrounding yourself with English content, can significantly shorten the learning time. 4. Exposure to real-life conversations. Engaging in actual conversations with native or fluent speakers speeds up progress. The ability to process spoken language in real time, ask for clarifications, and understand natural pauses or fillers in speech can enhance listening skills more rapidly than passive listening alone. 5. Personal motivation and consistency. Your level of motivation and the consistency of your efforts play a major role. Highly motivated learners who regularly challenge themselves with increasingly difficult content often improve faster. In contrast, sporadic practice without a clear goal can delay progress. Estimated timelines for improvement, beginner to intermediate. With consistent practice, most learners can move from a beginner to an intermediate level in listening comprehension within 3 to 6 months. Intermediate to advanced. Improving from intermediate to advanced comprehension may take 6 months to a year, depending on the intensity of practice and exposure to various accents and complex content. Advanced mastery, reaching a near-native level of listening comprehension, where you can effortlessly understand fast-paced or highly idiomatic speech, might take 1 to 2 years of immersion and focused practice. Ultimately, the time it takes to improve your English listening skills varies based on your individual circumstances. However, with focused, consistent effort, most learners will see noticeable improvement within a few months. Staying motivated while improving your English listening skills can be challenging, especially since language learning is a long-term process. Here are some effective strategies to help you stay motivated. 1. Set clear, achievable goals. Break it down, instead of vague goals like improve listening. Set specific, measurable objectives. For example, understand 70% of a 10-minute podcast without subtitles, or follow a conversation on a particular topic like travel or technology. Short-term goals. Break your long-term goals into smaller, achievable milestones. For instance, aim to understand a specific number of new words or phrases each week. Celebrate progress. Reward yourself when you reach your goals. Achieving small victories keeps you motivated and boosts your confidence. 2. Use content that interests you. Follow your passions. Listen to English content related to your hobbies, interests, or passions. If you love cooking, listen to cooking shows or food-related podcasts. If you enjoy technology, tune into tech podcasts or YouTube channels. Watch movies or series. Choose English language movies or TV shows that entertain you. Engaging with content that you enjoy makes learning feel less like work and more like fun. Diverse content. Vary the content you listen to, from podcasts and audiobooks to music and radio shows. This variety keeps things interesting and helps you engage with English in different contexts. 3. Track your progress. Journaling. Keep a listening journal where you record new words, phrases, or expressions you've learned. Seeing how much you've improved over time can be a powerful motivator. Use apps with progress tracking. Apps like Duolingo or Memrise track your learning streaks and offer rewards or achievements, giving you a sense of accomplishment. Before and after comparison. every few weeks, revisit a challenging audio clip or conversation that you found difficult earlier, and compare how much more you understand now. 4. Create a routine. Consistency is key. Establish a daily or weekly routine for listening practice. Even if it's just 15 to 30 minutes a day, consistent exposure is crucial for improvement. Make it habitual. Attach listening practice to your daily habits. For example, listen to English content during your commute, while exercising, or as part of your morning routine. Use short practice sessions. It's better to practice listening for 20 minutes every day than cramming hours into one day. Regular, shorter sessions help maintain motivation and prevent burnout. 5. Practice with others. Language exchange. Join a language exchange group or find a language partner with whom you can practice listening and speaking. Speaking to someone in real time will also motivate you to improve your listening skills. Study groups. Join online study groups or English-speaking communities. Sharing progress and challenges with others helps maintain accountability and provide support. Challenge a friend. If you have a friend learning English, set challenges for each other, like listening to the same podcast and discussing it later. 6. Use gamification. Language apps with games. Use apps that gamify the learning process, offering points, levels, and rewards. Apps like Duolingo, Memrise, and Babbel have game-like elements to keep you engaged. Turn listening into a game. Set personal challenges like how many words can I understand in a 5-minute podcast? Or how fast can I transcribe a conversation? Make it a fun challenge to beat your previous records. 7. Mix learning with relaxation. Listen to music. If you're feeling tired or demotivated, switch to English music and try to follow the lyrics. Music is a great way to relax while still engaging with the language. Combine with other activities. Multitask by listening to English content while doing something else, like cooking, exercising, or driving. This way, you keep learning without feeling overwhelmed. 8. Stay inspired by real-life stories. Watch success stories. Many English learners have shared their stories online about how they improved their language skills. Watching or reading about their progress can inspire you to keep going. Follow role models. Find influencers, teachers, or successful learners who share language tips and motivation on YouTube, podcasts, or social media. Their experiences and advice can keep you motivated. 9. Change your mindset. Embrace mistakes. Understand that making mistakes is a natural part of language learning. Don't be afraid of not understanding everything. Over time, it will get easier. Focus on the process, not just the outcome. Instead of fixating solely on the end goal of fluency, appreciate the small improvements and enjoy the journey of learning. Visualize success. Imagine how mastering English listening will improve your life, whether it's better job prospects, more travel opportunities, or personal satisfaction. This vision can serve as a powerful motivator. 10. Take breaks when needed. Avoid burnout. Don't push yourself too hard. If you feel tired or frustrated, take a short break to recharge. A fresh mind absorbs information more effectively. Alternate between easy and challenging content. Mix in content you find easier or more enjoyable with more challenging material. This balance helps keep motivation high and reduces the feeling of being overwhelmed. 11. Monitor your emotional and mental state. Stay positive. Remind yourself why you started learning English in the first place and how much progress you've already made. A positive mindset keeps you moving forward. Reward yourself. Celebrate small victories along the way, whether it's understanding a tricky podcast, watching a movie without subtitles, or having your first successful conversation in English. By using these strategies, you can maintain your motivation over the long term, making your journey toward mastering English listening skills both enjoyable and rewarding. The key is to stay consistent, keep the learning process fun, and always celebrate progress, no matter how small. Testing your progress and improving your English listening skills is important for tracking growth and identifying areas that need further development. Here are several effective ways to evaluate your progress. 1. Take listening comprehension tests, online tests. Many websites offer free listening comprehension tests at different levels: beginner, intermediate, advanced. Platforms like BBC Learning English, Cambridge English, and TOEFL provide standardized listening exercises with questions that test your understanding. Language learning apps like Duolingo and Memrise offer quizzes that test your listening comprehension. They often include a mix of listening exercises with multiple-choice questions or sentence completion tasks. Standardized exams. Consider taking a formal language proficiency test like IELTS, TOEFL, or Cambridge English. These exams have listening sections designed to assess your ability to understand different types of spoken English. 2. Use subtitles as a benchmark. Without subtitles first. Watch a video or listen to a podcast without subtitles and try to understand as much as you can. Afterward, watch the same content with subtitles to compare your understanding. Track how long you can go without subtitles. Over time, try to increase the length of time you watch content without relying on subtitles. The more content you can follow without them, the better your progress. 3. Keep a listening journal. Track new vocabulary. Write down new words and phrases you hear during listening practice. After some time, review these notes and see if you can recall and use them in context. Rate your understanding. After each listening practice, rate your comprehension on a scale of 1 to 10. Over time, you'll notice improvements in how much you understand. 4. Self-assessment. Summarize what you've heard. Listen and summarize. After listening to a podcast, audio clip, or conversation, try to summarize it in your own words, either orally or in writing. The more accurately you can summarize the content, the better your listening comprehension. Details and keywords. Focus on recalling the main ideas, keywords, or specific details. Compare this to the transcript, if available, or re-listen to check for any gaps in your understanding. 5. Transcription exercises. Write what you hear, select a short audio clip, 30 seconds to a minute, and try to transcribe everything you hear. After transcribing, compare it to the official transcript, if available, or replay the clip to see how close you were. Increase complexity. Start with slower, easier content and gradually work your way up to more complex or faster-paced material. Your progress will be evident as you become better at catching every word. 6. Monitor real-life conversations, conversations with native speakers. Engage in conversations with fluent English speakers, either in person or online. Evaluate how well you can follow the conversation without needing repetition or clarification. Track improvement. Over time, you should notice that you understand more of the conversation, need fewer clarifications, and feel more confident responding. 7. Compare with previous performance. Revisit old material. Go back to listening material that you struggled with previously, such as a podcast episode, a movie, or an audiobook chapter. Try it again after a few weeks or months of practice and see how much more you understand. Track your speed. As your listening improves, you'll find that you need less time to understand spoken content. Keep track of how quickly you can comprehend certain audio clips over time. 8. Engage in interactive listening games, apps with feedback. Use apps or games designed to improve listening skills, such as Rosetta Stone, Lingoda, or SpeechLing. These platforms offer immediate feedback on how well you understood a spoken segment. Interactive quizzes. Some online platforms provide interactive listening quizzes that adapt to your level and offer detailed performance reports. These reports highlight areas of improvement and track progress over time. 9. Dictation practice. Dictation software or websites use dictation exercises, where you listen to a passage and type exactly what you hear. Websites like Elo and Dictation.io offer free dictation exercises that allow you to practice listening and writing simultaneously. Accuracy check. Compare your typed text with the original to measure how accurately you've captured the spoken words. Over time, you'll notice fewer errors and improved word recognition. 10. Fluency in conversations. Use real conversations as a benchmark. Pay attention to how often you need someone to slow down, repeat, or rephrase something for you. Over time, as your listening skills improve, you should be able to follow conversations more easily and need less clarification. Measure response time. As you listen, track how quickly you're able to respond to what someone is saying. Improved listening comprehension will lead to faster and more natural responses during conversations. 11. Use different accents and speech patterns. Test with varied accents. Challenge yourself by listening to different English accents, British, American, Australian, etc. Monitor how much of the speech you can understand. The more accents and dialects you become familiar with, the better your overall comprehension. Track improvement across different speakers. As you expose yourself to different accents, you'll notice improvements in your ability to understand diverse English speakers without as much difficulty. 12. Timed listening practice. Set time limits. Listen to audio for a fixed period, e.g., 5 or 10 minutes, and try to grasp as much as you can within that time frame. Each week, increase the time or the complexity of the content. Increase listening speed. Over time, try listening to faster-paced content or speed up audio. Many apps let you increase playback speed to see if you can still comprehend it. If you can keep up, it's a sign that your listening skills are improving. 13. Feedback from others. Ask for feedback. If you practice listening and speaking in a conversation with a native or fluent English speaker, ask them for feedback on how well you understood them. They can point out areas where you may have struggled and offer advice. Language exchange partners. Language exchange partners can help gauge your progress. As you get better, they'll likely notice that you're asking for fewer clarifications or can follow conversations more easily. 14. Engage in listening challenges. Challenge yourself. Set personal challenges like understand a news report without pausing or listen to an audiobook chapter and explain it. Track how often you can complete these challenges without struggling. Weekly or monthly check-ins. Every week or month, test yourself against the same audio content to measure how much more you can understand or how much quicker you grasp the message. By using a combination of these strategies, you'll be able to accurately track your progress in English listening comprehension. Regular testing not only shows improvement but also highlights specific areas where more practice is needed, keeping you motivated and focused on your learning goals. Testing your progress in English listening skills is crucial for ensuring that you are continually improving and staying on track with your learning goals. Since listening is one of the most challenging aspects of language acquisition, especially in a complex language like English, it requires deliberate practice and evaluation. Whether you are aiming for conversational fluency, preparing for an exam like IELTS or TOEFL, or simply hoping to enjoy English language media without subtitles, regular assessment helps you measure how far you've come and identify areas for improvement. This detailed guide will explore multiple methods and techniques for testing your progress, ensuring that your efforts are effective and targeted. Take listening comprehension tests. One of the most direct ways to test your listening comprehension is through structured tests, which provide quantifiable feedback on your performance. Many online platforms, apps, and language courses offer listening exercises tailored to various skill levels, from beginner to advanced. These tests typically involve listening to a passage, either a conversation, a speech, or a narrative, and then answering questions to assess how well you understood the content. Online platforms, websites such as BBC Learning English, Cambridge English, and ESL Lab provide free listening comprehension exercises designed to challenge learners at different levels. These exercises often feature various accents, speeds of speech, and contexts, such as casual conversations, formal interviews, or news reports. Each exercise is followed by a set of questions, usually multiple choice or fill in the blank, allowing you to gauge your understanding of key ideas, details, and inferences. Standardized tests. if you're preparing for an English proficiency exam like IELTS, TOEFL, or Cambridge English, the listening sections of these tests are a reliable way to assess your progress. These standardized tests are designed to evaluate your ability to understand spoken English in both everyday and academic contexts. Practicing with sample listening sections from these exams will not only test your comprehension but also prepare you for the format and pace of the real test. Apps and games, language learning apps such as Duolingo, Memrise, and Babbel offer integrated listening comprehension quizzes. These apps use gamification techniques, allowing you to track your progress over time and see how your listening skills improve. As you move through different levels, you encounter increasingly complex audio material, helping you adapt to various speakers, accents, and vocabulary. Use subtitles as a benchmark. A practical way to test your listening progress is by using subtitles in combination with video or audio content. This method allows you to assess how much you can understand on your own before relying on subtitles for clarification. Without subtitles first, start by watching a movie, TV show, or video in English without using subtitles. Focus on grasping the main ideas, key details, and specific vocabulary. After you've watched the content, turn on the subtitles and watch it again. Compare how much you understood from the first viewing and note where you missed important points. This method provides immediate feedback and helps you see how your listening skills are improving over time. Tracking progress. Over time, you should aim to watch longer segments of content without subtitles. You can track your progress by timing how long you can follow the audio or video before needing subtitles. For example, if you start by understanding the first 2 minutes of a podcast without subtitles, work towards increasing that to 5 or 10 minutes. Keep a listening journal. Keeping a listening journal is an excellent way to reflect on your progress and document your learning process. This approach not only helps you track improvements but also allows you to record new vocabulary, phrases, and expressions that you encounter during your listening practice. Tracking new vocabulary. Every time you listen to a podcast, watch a video, or engage in a conversation, write down any new words or phrases you didn't understand initially. Look them up, learn their meanings, and practice using them in context. Over time, you can revisit your journal to see how many of these new words have become part of your active vocabulary. Rate your understanding. After each listening practice, give yourself a score or a brief written reflection on how well you understood the material. You could use a scale from 1 to 10 to rate your comprehension. For example, a 1 might mean you only caught a few words, while a 10 means you understood everything perfectly. This simple self-assessment provides a clear, visual way to track your progress over time. Self-assessment. Summarize what you've heard. One of the most effective ways to test your listening comprehension is by summarizing what you've heard in your own words. After listening to an audio clip, podcast, or conversation, take a few minutes to mentally or physically summarize the content, summarizing out loud or in writing, after listening to a passage. Try summarizing it aloud or writing it down. Focus on capturing the main ideas, key points, and important details. Compare your summary to the original content or a transcript, if available, to check for accuracy. This practice helps reinforce what you've heard and tests your ability to retain and process information in real time. Focus on key details. When summarizing, pay particular attention to specific details such as dates, names, numbers, and locations. Being able to recall these small but important elements is a sign of improved listening comprehension. If you struggle with recalling such details, listen to the content again and try to focus on picking up these specifics. Transcription exercises. Transcription exercises are a more advanced way to test your listening skills and can be incredibly effective in improving both your listening and writing abilities. Write what you hear. Select a short audio clip, such as a news report, an interview, or a podcast episode, and transcribe everything you hear. The goal is to capture every word as accurately as possible. This exercise forces you to listen closely to every sound, word, and phrase. Once you've completed your transcription, compare it to the original transcript, if available, or re-listen to the clip to see how accurate you were. Track improvement. Over time, you can track your transcription accuracy and increase the complexity of the content you transcribe. Start with slower, easier material and gradually work up to faster-paced or more complex conversations. Your transcription will become more accurate as your listening comprehension improves, and you'll find that you can keep up with more challenging content. Monitor real-life conversations. Engaging in real-life conversations is one of the best ways to test your listening comprehension in a practical, everyday context. Conversations involve more than just passive listening, they require active engagement, understanding, and responding in real time. Conversations with native speakers. Try to engage in conversations with native English speakers, either in person or online, through language exchange programs. Monitor how well you can follow the flow of the conversation without needing things repeated or clarified. This will give you a real-world test of how your listening skills are improving. Track improvement. Over time, you should notice that you're able to follow conversations more easily, even when the topic is unfamiliar or the speaker uses more complex vocabulary or faster speech. You'll also notice that you need fewer repetitions or clarifications, which is a clear indicator that your listening skills are improving. Compare with previous performance. An effective way to test your listening progress is to revisit old material that you found challenging. By comparing your understanding of the same content over time, you can clearly see how much you've improved. Revisit old material, go back to an audio clip, podcast, or video that you struggled with weeks or months ago. Try listening to it again and compare how much more you understand now compared to your first attempt. This method provides a concrete way to measure your progress, as you'll likely find that what once seemed difficult is now much easier to comprehend. Track your speed. Another way to measure progress is to track how quickly you can understand spoken English. For example, if you once had to pause or slow down a podcast to catch every word, see if you can now listen at a normal speed without needing to pause. Improved comprehension speed is a strong indicator of progress. Engage in interactive listening games. Interactive games that focus on listening comprehension can provide an enjoyable way to test your progress. Many language learning apps and websites offer games designed to improve listening skills while providing feedback on your performance. Use apps with feedback. Apps like Rosetta Stone, SpeechLing, and Lingota offer interactive listening exercises where you can listen to sentences or dialogues and answer questions or repeat what you've heard. These platforms often provide immediate feedback on how well you understood or pronounced the content. Language learning games. Some apps, such as Mango Languages or HelloTalk, turn listening comprehension into a game, with quizzes, challenges, and rewards. These games adapt to your skill level and track your progress, helping you stay motivated while testing your skills. Dictation practice. Dictation is another powerful tool for testing and improving your listening skills. This exercise involves listening to spoken content and typing or writing down exactly what you hear. Dictation software. Websites like dictation.io and Elo offer dictation exercises where you listen to a passage and transcribe it. These exercises test your ability to recognize individual words, sounds, and sentence structures, especially when spoken at natural speeds. Accuracy check. Once you've completed your dictation, compare your written version with the original text to check for accuracy. Over time, you'll notice that your transcriptions become more accurate, and you're able to keep up with more complex and faster-paced speech. Monitor fluency in conversations. Your fluency in real-life conversations is a clear indicator of how much your listening comprehension has improved. This goes beyond just understanding words, it involves your ability to engage in a fluid and natural exchange with others. Engage in real conversations. Pay attention to how often you need someone to slow down, repeat themselves, or rephrase something for you. As your listening improves, you'll notice that you're able to follow conversations more easily and respond more confidently. Measure response time. Another way to gauge your progress is by tracking how quickly you can respond to what someone says. If you can listen and immediately understand what's being said, your responses will be quicker and more natural, reflecting improved listening fluency. Use different accents and speech patterns. English is a global language spoken with a wide variety of accents, dialects, and speech patterns. Testing your comprehension across different accents will not only improve your listening skills but also prepare you for real-world interactions with English speakers from diverse backgrounds. Listen to varied accents. Challenge yourself by listening to English speakers from different regions, such as British, American, Australian, Indian, or South African accents. You can use resources like podcasts, interviews, and movies to expose yourself to different ways English is spoken. Track how much of the speech you understand and note any difficulties with certain accents. Track progress across accents. As you continue practicing, you'll notice improvements in your ability to understand different accents and dialects. This will help you feel more confident when interacting with English speakers from various parts of the world. Timed listening practice. Timed listening practice can help you measure how long you can focus and comprehend spoken English without becoming overwhelmed. This method is particularly useful for improving concentration and stamina in listening to English for extended periods. Set time limits. Start by listening to audio or video content for a fixed period, such as 5 or 10 minutes. Your goal is to understand as much as possible within that time frame. Each week, increase the duration or the complexity of the content. By pushing yourself to listen for longer periods, you'll build both your comprehension and your ability to concentrate on spoken English. Increase listening speed. Many platforms allow you to adjust the playback speed of audio content. As your skills improve, try listening to content at a faster speed to test your ability to comprehend rapid speech. If you can still follow the conversation or lecture at a higher speed, it's a sign that your listening comprehension is advancing. Feedback from others. Getting feedback from others, particularly fluent or native speakers, is an excellent way to assess your listening skills. Their outside perspective can help you identify areas of improvement that you might not notice on your own. Ask for feedback. After a conversation or language exchange, ask your conversation partner to provide feedback on how well you understood them. They can point out specific areas where you may have struggled, such as with certain accents, vocabulary, or complex sentence structures. Language exchange partners. Participating in a language exchange program, where you converse with a native English speaker in exchange for helping them with your native language, is an ideal way to test your listening skills. Your partner will likely notice if you're asking for fewer clarifications or if you can follow the conversation more easily over time, giving you valuable insight into your progress. Engage in listening challenges. Setting personal challenges is a great way to keep yourself motivated and test your listening skills in real-world situations. These challenges can be as simple or as complex as you like, but they should push you out of your comfort zone. Create challenges. Set goals such as understand a news report without pausing or listen to an audiobook chapter and explain it without using a transcript. By gradually increasing the difficulty of these challenges, you'll continuously test your listening comprehension and improve your skills. Check in regularly. Set weekly or monthly benchmarks to test yourself. For example, you might choose to listen to the same news segment every month and see how much more you understand over time. This consistent approach to testing will give you a clear picture of your progress. By using a combination of these strategies, you'll be able to track your progress in listening comprehension effectively. Regularly testing yourself not only shows how far you've come but also highlights areas where more practice is needed. This structured approach ensures that you continue to improve your English listening skills and reach your language learning goals. Learning a new language is akin to setting sail on uncharted waters. It is an adventure marked by moments of exhilaration, frustration, and discovery. My journey to learn English was not just about acquiring a new skill, it was about transforming myself and expanding my horizons beyond the familiar confines of my native language. Growing up in a small town where English was rarely spoken, I was fascinated by the way this language seemed to open doors to new worlds, connecting people across cultures and continents. My journey has been long and winding, filled with challenges and triumphs, and it has shaped me in ways I never imagined. This narrative is not merely a recounting of how I learned English. It is a reflection on the growth, resilience, and perseverance that language learning demands. From my first hesitant steps with basic words and phrases to confidently using English in academic and professional settings, each phase of this journey has been a milestone in my personal development. I hope that sharing my experiences will resonate with others who are on a similar path and perhaps provide some encouragement along the way. My earliest memories of English are tied to the world of entertainment. Growing up, English was not the language of daily conversation in my home or community. However, it was the language of cartoons, songs, and advertisements on television. I remember watching shows like Tom and Jerry and Scooby-Doo, where the characters spoke in rapid, animated English. Although I couldn't understand most of what they said, the rhythm and melody of the language captivated me. It felt like a puzzle I was eager to solve, and I would often mimic the sounds, even though I had no idea what they meant. My first structured encounter with English was in school. English was introduced as a subject in the 3rd grade, and it was an entirely new world for me. I remember the excitement of opening my first English textbook, which was filled with colorful pictures and simple sentences like, "This is a ball," and "That is a cat." Our teacher, Mr. Kumar, was kind and patient, and he made learning fun with songs and games. I vividly recall our first lesson, where we learned to say, "Good morning," and "Goodbye." These simple phrases felt magical, like secret codes that unlocked a new way of communicating. However, my initial enthusiasm soon gave way to frustration. English pronunciation was difficult, and I often felt embarrassed when I couldn't get the words right. The silent E at the end of words like kite or note baffled me. I struggled to differentiate between similar-sounding words like pen and pin. My classmates and I would sometimes make fun of each other's mistakes, which, though light-hearted, made me self-conscious about speaking English in class. Despite these challenges, I was determined to learn. I spent hours practicing the alphabet, reading aloud from my textbook, and trying to memorize new words. As I moved to higher grades, English became more prominent in the school curriculum. We were introduced to grammar rules, sentence construction, and short stories. While these lessons were more structured, they also became more challenging. I remember being particularly confused by the concept of tenses. The idea that verbs changed form based on time was foreign to me. It took me a long time to grasp the difference between sentences like, "I eat," "I ate," and "I have eaten." I would often mix them up in my writing and speaking, leading to amusing but frustrating misunderstandings. Despite the challenges, I was fortunate to have teachers who were supportive and encouraging. Mrs. Sharma, who taught us in the 5th grade, was particularly influential. She had a passion for English that was infectious. She introduced us to storybooks and poems beyond the prescribed curriculum, encouraging us to explore the language in a more relaxed and enjoyable way. I still remember the day she read out a poem by Robert Frost, Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening. The imagery and rhythm of the poem were mesmerizing, and I felt a deep desire to understand and appreciate English literature. Mrs. Sharma also believed in the importance of speaking practice. She would organize debates, storytelling sessions, and group discussions in class. At first, I was terrified of these activities. I was afraid of making mistakes and being laughed at. But Mrs. Sharma's gentle encouragement and positive feedback helped me overcome my fear. I realized that speaking, even if imperfectly, was a crucial part of learning. With time, I became more comfortable participating in these sessions, and I noticed a gradual improvement in my confidence and fluency. One of the most memorable activities in Mrs. Sharma's class was the Word of the Day exercise. Every day, she would write a new English word on the board, along with its meaning and usage in a sentence. We were encouraged to use that word in our conversations and writing throughout the day. This exercise not only expanded my vocabulary but also sparked a love for words and their nuances. I began to keep a small notebook where I jotted down new words I encountered, a habit that I maintain to this day. By the time I reached middle school, I realized that to truly excel in English, I needed to go beyond what was taught in the classroom. This led me to the world of books. Our school library, though small, was a treasure trove of English literature. I started with simple, illustrated storybooks, Aesop's Fables, Grimm's Fairy Tales, and The Jungle Book. These stories were not only entertaining but also served as a gentle introduction to more complex sentence structures and vocabulary. As my reading skills improved, I ventured into chapter books. I remember being particularly captivated by The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. The language was challenging, with its use of dialects and idioms. But the story was so engaging that I persevered. I would often read with a dictionary by my side, looking up unfamiliar words and phrases. This was a slow and painstaking process, but it helped me build a solid vocabulary and a deeper understanding of English grammar. Reading became a passion. I would borrow books from the library every week and spend hours lost in their pages. Through books, I traveled to faraway lands, met fascinating characters, and experienced adventures beyond my wildest imagination. I read everything I could get my hands on, classics like Pride and Prejudice, mysteries by Agatha Christie, and even simplified versions of Shakespeare's plays. Each book was a stepping stone in my language learning journey. Expanding my vocabulary and improving my comprehension skills, books were not my only resource. Around this time, I discovered the joy of writing. Inspired by the stories I read, I began to write my own short stories and poems in English. Initially, my writing was full of errors, but I didn't let that discourage me. I would ask my teachers to review my work and provide feedback. Their constructive criticism helped me understand my mistakes and improve. Writing became a way for me to practice what I had learned and express my thoughts creatively. The arrival of the Internet was a game changer in my English learning journey. Suddenly, I had access to a vast array of resources and learning tools at my fingertips. I discovered websites dedicated to English learners, offering interactive exercises, quizzes, and forums where I could ask questions and get answers from native speakers. I also started watching English videos on YouTube, from grammar tutorials to TED Talks. These videos exposed me to different accents, speech patterns, and styles of presentation, which greatly improved my listening skills. One of the most significant breakthroughs came when I joined an online language exchange platform. This site allowed me to connect with people from around the world who were learning my native language and who, in turn, helped me with English. I made friends from countries like the United States, the United Kingdom, and Australia. We would have regular conversations over Skype, discussing everything from cultural differences to everyday life. These exchanges were incredibly valuable, not just for practicing English, but for understanding the nuances of the language in different cultural contexts. The Internet also introduced me to a wealth of digital literature. I began reading online articles, blogs, and e-books on a wide range of topics. This not only broadened my knowledge but also exposed me to different writing styles and vocabularies. I subscribed to English newspapers and magazines, which helped me stay updated on global events while improving my reading and comprehension skills. Despite the progress I was making, my journey was not without its setbacks. English, like any language, is full of complexities and contradictions. There were times when I felt overwhelmed by the sheer number of rules and exceptions. I would often confuse similar-sounding words, misuse prepositions, or struggle with complex sentence structures. These mistakes made me feel inadequate, and I began to doubt my ability to ever achieve true fluency. Pronunciation was another major challenge. English has many sounds that do not exist in my native language, and I found it difficult to produce them correctly. Words like thorough and rural were tongue twisters, and I would often stumble over them. I also struggled with intonation and stress patterns, which are crucial for conveying meaning and emotion in spoken English. I remember feeling disheartened after a conversation with a native speaker who had trouble understanding me because of my accent. Cultural differences also posed a challenge. I realized that learning a language is not just about mastering grammar and vocabulary, it's about understanding the culture and context in which the language is used. I had difficulty grasping idiomatic expressions, humor, and slang. For example, the phrase, piece of cake, puzzled me for a long time because I took it literally. I also found it challenging to understand humor based on wordplay or cultural references that were unfamiliar to me. To overcome these challenges, I adopted a more systematic approach to learning. I began focusing on one area at a time, first pronunciation, then grammar, then vocabulary. I practiced speaking aloud, recording myself, and comparing my pronunciation with that of native speakers. I watched English movies with subtitles, pausing frequently to repeat phrases and mimic the actor's speech. I also started reading books on English idioms and expressions, learning their meanings and usage through context. One of the most effective strategies I found was to immerse myself in English as much as possible. I set my phone and computer interfaces to English, listened to English podcasts during my commute, and even started thinking in English. This constant exposure helped me internalize the language and think in English rather than translating from my native language. As I became more comfortable with conversational English, I realized that there were still many areas where I needed improvement, particularly in academic and professional settings. To address this, I enrolled in an advanced English course at a local language institute. The course focused on academic writing, presentation skills, and professional communication. It was a challenging but immensely rewarding experience. One of the key areas we covered was essay writing. I learned how to structure essays, develop arguments, and use formal language. This was a departure from the more narrative and creative writing I had been used to, and it required a different mindset. I had to learn to be precise and concise, to back up my arguments with evidence, and to use linking words and phrases to ensure coherence and flow. The feedback from my instructors was invaluable in helping me refine my writing skills. We also practiced giving presentations in English. This was one of the most daunting aspects of the course for me. Speaking in front of an audience, even in my native language, made me nervous, and doing so in English was even more intimidating. However, the course provided a supportive environment where we could practice and receive constructive feedback. We were taught how to structure our presentations, use visual aids effectively, and engage with the audience. With practice, I gained confidence and began to enjoy the process of sharing my ideas and knowledge in English. Around this time, I also started preparing for the IELTS exam, an internationally recognized English proficiency test. Preparing for the test was intense and required a lot of dedication. I practiced each section, listening, reading, writing, and speaking, meticulously. The listening section was particularly challenging, as it required not just understanding spoken English but also retaining and recalling specific details. I would listen to sample recordings repeatedly, taking notes and trying to improve my comprehension. The writing section required me to write essays and reports within a strict time limit, which was difficult at first. I practiced organizing my thoughts quickly, using formal language, and ensuring grammatical accuracy. For the speaking section, I practiced answering common questions and engaged in mock interviews with my language exchange partners. The preparation was exhausting but ultimately rewarding. When I received my results, I felt a tremendous sense of accomplishment. It was a testament to the hard work and effort I had put into mastering English. With my improved skills and newfound confidence, I began using English more actively in real-world situations. I secured a job at a multinational company where English was the primary language of communication. This was a significant step for me, as it was the first time I was using English in a professional context on a daily basis. Initially, I felt anxious and self-conscious. Writing emails, participating in meetings, and making small talk with colleagues in English were all new and challenging experiences. However, I quickly realized that most of my colleagues were supportive and understanding. They appreciated my efforts to communicate effectively and often provided helpful feedback. I learned how to write clear and concise emails, how to structure and present my ideas in meetings, and how to adapt my language based on the context and audience. For example, I learned to use more formal language when addressing clients and to adopt a more conversational tone with colleagues. One of the most challenging aspects of using English at work was adapting to the specific jargon and terminology used in my field. I had to familiarize myself with a new set of vocabulary and acronyms, which took time and effort. I would often take notes during meetings and look up unfamiliar terms afterward. Gradually, I became more comfortable and proficient, and I noticed a significant improvement in my overall communication skills. Using English in a professional setting also helped me develop a better understanding of cultural differences and etiquette. I learned the importance of being polite and diplomatic in emails, of listening actively during discussions, and of expressing disagreement respectfully. These are skills that go beyond language and are crucial for effective communication in any professional environment. One of the most transformative experiences in my journey was the opportunity to travel to English-speaking countries. My first trip was to the United Kingdom, a place I had always dreamed of visiting. It was a short study tour organized by my Language Institute, and it included a 2-week course at a language school in London. This was my first experience of being in a fully immersive English environment, and it pushed me to use the language in all aspects of daily life. Walking through the streets of London, visiting historical landmarks like the Tower of London and the British Museum, and interacting with locals were surreal experiences. I had the chance to attend classes with students from different parts of the world, all of whom were there to improve their English. We shared our experiences, learned from each other, and practiced speaking English together. The teachers at the language school were experienced and engaging, and the lessons were both challenging and enjoyable. One of the most memorable experiences was visiting a traditional English pub with my classmates. It was a quintessentially British experience, and I was struck by the warmth and friendliness of the people we met. We had lively conversations about everything from politics to pop culture, and I realized that my English was good enough to engage in meaningful discussions on a wide range of topics. This trip boosted my confidence immensely and reinforced my belief that language learning is about more than just words and grammar. It's about connecting with people and cultures. Traveling also exposed me to different accents and dialects. I remember being surprised by how different the English spoken in London sounded compared to what I had heard in American movies. The British accent was sometimes difficult to understand, especially when people spoke quickly or used slang. However, I soon adapted and found myself picking up some British expressions and pronunciation patterns. It was fascinating to see how the same language could vary so much based on geography and culture. Learning English has been a journey of personal growth and transformation. It has taught me the value of perseverance and hard work. There were many times when I felt like giving up, when the challenges seemed too great, and the progress too slow. But each time, I pushed through, motivated by my love for the language and my desire to communicate effectively. This resilience has helped me in other areas of my life as well, teaching me that with determination and effort, I can overcome any obstacle. English has also made me more open-minded and curious about the world. Through the language, I have connected with people from different cultures and backgrounds, learned about their perspectives and experiences, and gained a broader understanding of global issues. It has made me more empathetic and appreciative of diversity, and it has deepened my sense of global citizenship. One of the most rewarding aspects of learning English has been the ability to share my own culture and experiences with others. Whether it's explaining the traditions and festivals of my country to my language exchange partners or discussing the nuances of my native language with colleagues, English has given me a voice to express myself to a global audience. It has empowered me to participate in conversations and contribute my unique perspective, even though I have reached a level of proficiency where I am comfortable using English in most situations. I believe that learning a language is a lifelong journey. There is always more to learn, more to explore, and more to understand. I continue to set new goals for myself, whether it's reading more complex literature, improving my accent, or even learning to write creatively in English. I also aspire to help others on their language learning journeys. I have started volunteering as an English tutor for newcomers in my community. It's a way for me to give back and to share the lessons I have learned. Teaching others has given me a deeper appreciation of the language and has reinforced my own understanding. I am also exploring the possibility of pursuing higher education in an English-speaking country. I believe that studying in an immersive English environment will not only improve my language skills but also provide me with valuable academic and professional experiences. It's a challenging goal, but one that I am determined to achieve, reflecting on my journey to learn English. I am filled with a sense of accomplishment and gratitude. What started as a simple curiosity has transformed into a lifelong passion. The road has been long and often challenging, but every step has been worth it. English has opened up a world of opportunities for me, allowing me to connect with people, advance in my career, and grow as an individual. I hope that my story inspires others who are on a similar path. Learning a new language is never easy, but with determination, curiosity, and the willingness to embrace mistakes, it is possible to achieve fluency and beyond. My journey with English is far from over, and I look forward to all the new experiences and discoveries that lie ahead. As I delved deeper into learning English, I began to realize that one of the biggest obstacles wasn't the language itself but the fear of making mistakes. This fear was so pervasive that it often paralyzed me, preventing me from speaking up in class or even practicing with friends. The anxiety of mispronouncing a word or using incorrect grammar made me overly self-conscious. This is a common challenge for many language learners and is often referred to as language anxiety. I remember vividly an incident during a group presentation in high school. Each member of my group had a specific part to present, and I was supposed to introduce our topic. Despite rehearsing my lines countless times, when the moment came, I froze. I could feel my heart pounding, and my hands started to shake. My mind went blank, and all I could think about was the possibility of embarrassing myself in front of the class. After a long, awkward pause, I managed to say a few sentences, but I knew I hadn't delivered as I had practiced. The experience left me feeling defeated and disheartened. After that day, I avoided speaking in public as much as possible. I felt trapped in a cycle of fear and self-doubt. Every time I wanted to speak, a voice in my head would remind me of that failed presentation. This internal battle was more challenging than any grammar rule or vocabulary list. It was a struggle against my own insecurities and the fear of being judged. To overcome this, I knew I had to change my mindset. I started reading about language anxiety and how to combat it. One of the most helpful pieces of advice I found was to embrace mistakes as a natural part of the learning process. This was easier said than done. I had always been a perfectionist, and the idea of making mistakes in front of others was terrifying. But I realized that this mindset was holding me back. I needed to redefine what success meant in my language learning journey. Instead of aiming for perfection, I decided to focus on progress. I began setting small, manageable goals for myself. My first goal was to participate in class discussions at least once a week, regardless of how small my contribution was. At first, it was incredibly challenging. I would rehearse my sentences in my head multiple times before speaking. But as I gradually started participating more, I noticed that my anxiety lessened. I realized that most people were supportive and didn't judge me for my mistakes. In fact, many of my classmates appreciated my efforts and encouraged me to keep speaking. Another strategy that helped was to practice speaking in low-pressure environments. I joined a local English conversation club where people from different backgrounds came together to practice English. It was a safe space where everyone was encouraged to speak freely without fear of judgment. This was a turning point for me. I met people who were also struggling with language anxiety, and we supported each other. We shared our experiences, celebrated our small victories, and learned from our mistakes. This community became a source of strength and motivation for me. Over time, I began to see mistakes not as failures but as opportunities to learn and grow. Each mistake taught me something new and helped me improve. I became more comfortable speaking English, both in formal and informal settings. This shift in mindset not only helped me overcome my fear of speaking but also had a positive impact on my overall confidence. One of the most enjoyable and effective ways I found to learn English was through entertainment. Watching movies, listening to music, and following TV shows were not only fun but also provided immersive language practice. This method of learning allowed me to pick up new vocabulary, understand different accents, and get a feel for the natural flow of the language. I remember the first time I watched a Hollywood movie without subtitles, Forrest Gump. It was a film that came highly recommended for English learners because of its clear pronunciation and relatively simple language. At first, I struggled to understand everything. I missed a lot of the dialogues and felt lost in some parts of the story. But instead of getting discouraged, I watched it again, this time with subtitles. I paused and rewound scenes, repeating the lines along with the characters. By the third time I watched the movie, I understood much more and even picked up some iconic phrases like, "Life is like a box of chocolates, you never know what you're gonna get." Music was another powerful tool in my language learning arsenal. I started with pop songs because they were catchy and repetitive, making it easier to remember the lyrics. Songs by artists like the Beatles, Taylor Swift, and Ed Sheeran became my favorites. I would print out the lyrics and sing along, paying attention to pronunciation and rhythm. This practice not only improved my listening skills but also helped me with pronunciation and intonation. There's something about singing that makes it easier to remember words and phrases, and it was a fun way to learn. I also explored English language TV shows. Sitcoms like Friends and How I Met Your Mother were particularly helpful because they featured everyday conversations and a lot of humor, which made the learning process enjoyable. I would watch an episode, then read its script online to understand the dialogues better. Sometimes, I would repeat scenes, trying to mimic the characters' accents and expressions. This helped me understand the cultural context of jokes and idioms, which are often the hardest parts of a language to grasp. One of the challenges I faced while learning through movies and TV shows was the use of slang and informal expressions. Phrases like "what's up?" or "break a leg" confused me initially because their literal translations didn't make sense. To tackle this, I started keeping a notebook where I would write down unfamiliar expressions and their meanings. I also used online forums like Reddit and Quora to ask native speakers about phrases I didn't understand. The community was always helpful, and these interactions provided insights into the nuances of the language that I wouldn't have found in textbooks. Through entertainment, I not only improved my language skills but also gained a deeper understanding of different cultures. I learned about American customs and holidays through movies, British humor and history through TV shows, and the diversity of the English-speaking world through music from different countries. This cultural exposure made learning English more meaningful and enjoyable. As my proficiency in English improved, I began to explore more complex and nuanced forms of the language, particularly through literature. Reading classic novels, contemporary fiction, and poetry in English was a significant step in my journey. It not only enhanced my vocabulary and comprehension but also gave me insights into the literary and cultural history of the English-speaking world. My first foray into English literature was with Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. It was a challenging read because of the old-fashioned language and complex sentence structures. I remember struggling with the opening line, "It is a truth universally acknowledged, that a single man in possession of a good fortune, must be in want of a wife." The language was so different from the conversational English I was used to. However, I was determined to understand the story. I read slowly, often consulting a dictionary and an annotated edition of the book that explained the historical context and cultural references. As I progressed, I started to appreciate the wit and irony in Austen's writing and the intricate portrayal of social dynamics in the early 19th century. After Austen, I moved on to other classics like Charles Dickens' Great Expectations and F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby. Each book was a unique experience, offering a different perspective on life and society. Dickens' vivid descriptions and memorable characters, and Fitzgerald's lyrical prose and themes of aspiration and disillusionment, left a profound impact on me. Reading these works required patience and perseverance, but the effort was immensely rewarding. I felt a sense of achievement in being able to understand and appreciate these masterpieces in their original language. Poetry was another area I explored, though it presented its own set of challenges. Poems often use condensed language, metaphor, and symbolism, which can be difficult to grasp even for native speakers. I started with simpler poems by Robert Frost and Emily Dickinson before moving on to more complex works by T.S. Eliot and W.B. Yeats. I found that reading poetry out loud helped me appreciate the rhythm and sound of the language. I would listen to recordings of poets reading their work, trying to emulate their intonation and expression. This practice improved my pronunciation and also deepened my understanding of the emotional and musical qualities of English. One of the most enriching aspects of engaging with literature was participating in online book clubs and discussion forums. These platforms allowed me to discuss the books I was reading with people from around the world. I would share my interpretations of characters and themes, ask questions about passages I found confusing, and read others' insights and analyses. These discussions broadened my perspective and helped me see the language in a new light. It was fascinating to see how different readers interpreted the same text in various ways, influenced by their cultural backgrounds and personal experiences. As I continued to build my proficiency in English, I decided to pursue higher education in an English-speaking country. This was a significant decision that required careful planning and preparation. I aimed to enroll in a master's program in my field of interest, and I knew that this would require not only a high level of English proficiency but also familiarity with academic conventions and research methodologies in English. One of the first steps in this journey was preparing for the GRE, Graduate Record Examination, which is a standardized test required for admission to many graduate programs in the United States. The test's verbal section was particularly challenging because it included complex vocabulary and reading comprehension questions based on dense and abstract passages. To prepare, I studied word lists, practiced with sample questions, and read articles from academic journals and magazines like The Economist and Scientific American. This practice not only helped me perform well on the test but also improved my ability to understand and analyze complex texts. Writing the statement of purpose and other application essays was another challenging but rewarding experience. These essays required me to articulate my academic and professional goals clearly and persuasively. I had to reflect deeply on my experiences, motivations, and aspirations and express them in a coherent and compelling way. I spent countless hours drafting, revising, and refining my essays. I sought feedback from mentors and peers, and each round of revisions helped me improve in not only the content but also the clarity and flow of my writing. Once I was admitted to a graduate program, I faced the challenge of adapting to an academic environment where English was the medium of instruction and communication. I had to participate in seminars, write research papers, and give presentations, all in English. Initially, I found the pace and complexity of academic discussions intimidating. The other students seemed so fluent and articulate, and I often struggled to keep up. But I reminded myself that I was there to learn and grow, and I gradually became more comfortable participating in discussions and asking questions. Writing research papers was one of the most demanding aspects of graduate school. Academic writing requires a specific style and structure, with a strong emphasis on clarity, coherence, and evidence-based arguments. I had to learn how to conduct literature reviews, formulate research questions, and present my findings in a clear and logical manner. I read numerous academic papers to understand how experts in the field constructed their arguments and used evidence. I also sought feedback from my professors and peers, which was invaluable in helping me improve my writing. One of the most memorable experiences of my academic journey was presenting a paper at an international conference. It was a daunting prospect. I would be speaking in front of an audience of experts, many of whom were native English speakers. I spent weeks preparing my presentation, rehearsing my talk, and refining my slides. On the day of the conference, I was nervous but also excited. As I began speaking, I felt my confidence grow. I was able to present my ideas clearly and respond to questions from the audience. The positive feedback I received was incredibly gratifying and reinforced my belief in my ability to communicate effectively in English, even in a highly specialized academic context. As my academic journey progressed, I also sought to build my professional skills in English. I realized that to succeed in a globalized world, it was not enough to be proficient in everyday or academic English. I also needed to master the language of the workplace. This meant developing skills in professional communication, such as writing reports, giving presentations, and networking effectively. One of my first professional experiences using English was during an internship at a multinational company. The working language was English, and I had to use it for everything from writing emails and reports to participating in meetings and making presentations. This was a steep learning curve. I had to learn how to write concise and professional emails, how to structure reports clearly and logically, and how to present my ideas confidently and persuasively. I remember feeling particularly nervous about an important presentation I had to give to the senior management team. I spent days preparing, practicing my delivery, and anticipating possible questions. When the day came, I was anxious but well prepared. As I delivered my presentation, I focused on speaking clearly and confidently. To my relief, the presentation was well received, and I even received compliments on my clarity and professionalism. This experience was a major confidence boost and showed me that I was capable of performing well in a professional English-speaking environment. Networking was another area where I had to develop my skills. In my culture, networking is often seen as a more formal and structured activity, whereas in many English-speaking countries, it's more informal and conversational. I had to learn how to engage in small talk, introduce myself and my work succinctly, and build rapport with colleagues and industry professionals. I attended networking events, participated in workshops, and practiced my elevator pitch until I felt comfortable introducing myself in a variety of contexts. This skill has been invaluable in building professional relationships and advancing my career. Learning a new language is often described as a journey, but it's not a straight path. It's a roller coaster ride, full of highs and lows, moments of joy and frustration. Reflecting on my experience, I realized that this emotional journey was as significant as the linguistic and cognitive challenges I faced. There were moments of exhilaration, such as when I successfully held a conversation with a native speaker or understood the lyrics of a song without needing to look up the words. These moments felt like small victories, affirming my progress and motivating me to keep going. I remember the first time I had a dream in English. It was a surreal experience, as if my subconscious mind had finally embraced the language. It made me feel like English was becoming a part of who I was. Not just something I was learning, but there were also moments of deep frustration. Times when I couldn't find the right words, when I misunderstood someone's meaning, or when I felt overwhelmed by the complexity of the language. I remember once trying to participate in a discussion about a complex topic and feeling completely lost. I couldn't follow the thread of the conversation, and I felt embarrassed and inadequate. Experiences like this made me question my abilities and whether I would ever truly master the language. In these low moments, I often felt isolated and discouraged. It's easy to compare yourself to others and feel like you're falling short, especially when you're surrounded by people who seem so fluent and confident. But I learned to be kinder to myself, to acknowledge the progress I had made rather than focusing on my shortcomings. I reminded myself that learning a language is a lifelong process, and setbacks are a natural part of that journey. What helped me through these difficult times was finding a supportive community of fellow learners and mentors. We shared our struggles and triumphs, encouraged each other, and celebrated our progress together. This sense of community made a huge difference. It reminded me that I wasn't alone in my struggles and that every learner, no matter how proficient they seemed, faced challenges at some point. As my proficiency in English grew, I began to see the language not just as a means of communication but as a tool for personal and social change. English opened doors for me, giving me access to education, information, and opportunities that would have been out of reach otherwise. It also allowed me to connect with people from diverse backgrounds and to participate in discussions about global issues that I cared about. One of the most impactful experiences I had was volunteering as an English tutor for refugees and immigrants in my community. Many of the people I worked with were starting their English learning journey from scratch. They faced immense challenges, not just in learning the language but also in adapting to a new culture and environment. Working with them reminded me of my own struggles and how far I had come. It was incredibly rewarding to help them navigate their new lives and to see their confidence grow as they improved their language skills. This experience also made me reflect on the privilege of language. English is often seen as the global language of opportunity, but not everyone has equal access to learning it. Teaching English to those who needed it for survival and integration highlighted for me the importance of language education as a tool for empowerment. It inspired me to continue supporting language learning initiatives and to advocate for more inclusive and accessible education policies. Looking back on my journey, I realized that learning English has been one of the most transformative experiences of my life. It has shaped who I am, opened up new worlds of knowledge and opportunity, and connected me with people and cultures I would never have encountered otherwise. It has been a journey of intellectual growth, personal discovery, and emotional resilience. I now see English not just as a language I have learned, but as a part of who I am. It's a tool I use to express myself, to think critically, and to engage with the world. It's a bridge that connects me to others and to the broader global community. And it's a passion that I continue to nurture, whether by reading a new novel, exploring a different accent, or helping others on their own language learning journeys. As I look to the future, I know that my relationship with English will continue to evolve. There are still many challenges to tackle, many new areas to explore, and many more experiences to be had. But I'm excited about what lies ahead. Because if there's one thing my journey has taught me, it's that learning a language is not just about reaching a destination, it's about enjoying the journey itself. And I can't wait to see where this journey takes me next. It was a warm, breezy afternoon in May when Emily decided to take a walk in the park. The city had been unusually busy that day, with traffic jams and loud noises filling the air. Emily, a university student who enjoyed a good escape from the chaos, felt the need for some peace, her usual spot was a small, hidden grove in the farthest part of the park, where most people rarely ventured. The trees were taller there, their thick branches weaving a green canopy above. The only sound was the occasional rustle of leaves and the distant chirping of birds. Emily sat down on a stone bench, took out her favorite book, and began to read. As she flipped through the pages, she noticed something strange out of the corner of her eye. There, near a patch of wildflowers, was a shimmering light, faint but persistent. At first, she thought it was just the sun reflecting off something shiny, but the light remained even when she shifted her position. Curiosity got the best of her. Emily walked closer and found herself standing before what appeared to be a swirling, glowing portal. She blinked several times, convinced her eyes were playing tricks on her. But the portal remained. With a deep breath, she reached out her hand, expecting it to pass through thin air. But instead, her fingers disappeared into the light, as though it was liquid. Emily gasped and pulled her hand back. Her heart raced. What was this? A dream? Some kind of illusion? But something inside her, a feeling she couldn't quite explain, drew her toward the portal. She took another deep breath and, without another thought, stepped through. Emily's entire body felt weightless for a moment, as though she was floating in water. Colors swirled around her, gold, green, and blue, blending into a soft blur. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the sensation stopped, and she was standing on solid ground again. She opened her eyes and found herself in a vast, open field. The sky was a brilliant shade of blue, with clouds that looked like cotton candy drifting lazily overhead. In the distance, towering mountains framed the horizon, their snow-capped peaks shimmering in the sunlight, but what caught her attention the most was the air. It smelled different, cleaner, fresher, and filled with the scent of pine and earth. It was nothing like the city she had just left. As she took in her surroundings, Emily noticed a figure approaching. A man, dressed in armor that glinted in the sunlight, walked toward her. His face was strong and serious, and he carried a sword at his side. "Who are you?" he called out. His voice deep and commanding. I'm Emily," she stammered, unsure of what to say. "Where am I?" "You're in the land of Alora," the man replied. "How did you get here?" I don't know," Emily said honestly. "I found a portal in the park, and I walked through it." The man's eyes narrowed in suspicion. "A portal? Those haven't been opened in centuries." Before Emily could respond, the man introduced himself. "I am Alden, a warrior of the north. And you? You don't belong here." "I can see that," Emily muttered, looking around at the unfamiliar landscape. Alden studied her for a moment, then gestured for her to follow him. "Come with me. There's someone you need to meet." Emily followed Alden through the vast field until they reached a small village nestled between the hills. The houses were made of stone and wood, with thatched roofs and narrow windows. People bustled about, some carrying baskets of food, others tending to animals. It felt like she had stepped back in time. They stopped in front of a large wooden house at the edge of the village. Alden knocked on the door, and after a moment, it creaked open to reveal an older woman with long, silver hair. Her eyes were sharp, and she wore a long, flowing robe that shimmered in the light. "This is Zara," Alden said. "She is the keeper of knowledge in our land. If anyone knows about the portal, it's her." Zara's eyes fixed on Emily with an intensity that made her shiver. "You came through the portal?" she asked, her voice soft but powerful. Emily nodded. "I didn't mean to. I just found it." Zara stepped aside and motioned for them to enter. Inside, the house was filled with shelves of books, strange artifacts, and glowing crystals. It smelled faintly of herbs and incense. The portal you found, Zara began, is no ordinary doorway. It connects our world, Althora, to your world. But it has not been opened for many years, and its appearance now is not a coincidence. Emily frowned. What do you mean? Zara sat down at a large wooden table and gestured for Emily and Alden to sit as well. There is a great imbalance between our worlds. Long ago, they were one, but a powerful force divided them. The portal you found is a remnant of that time. Alden leaned forward. The heart of time? Zara nodded. Yes. The heart of time is a powerful artifact that maintains the balance between the worlds. But it has been lost for centuries. Without it, both worlds are in danger of collapsing. Emily felt a chill run down her spine. And you think I'm here because of this? Zara's eyes glowed faintly. Yes. You were drawn to the portal for a reason. The heart of time must be found, and I believe you and Alden are the ones who must find it. Emily could hardly believe what she was hearing. A magical artifact. Two worlds collapsing. It all seemed so unreal. But as she looked at Zara and Alden, she knew they were serious. Where do we even start looking for this heart of time? Emily asked. Zara stood and walked over to a large map hanging on the wall. She pointed to a distant mountain range far to the north. The heart of time was last seen in the mountains of Eliezer. But getting there will not be easy. The journey is long, and the path is treacherous. Alden stood as well, his face determined. We'll find it. We have to. Emily swallowed hard. This wasn't exactly how she had planned to spend her day. But something inside her, perhaps the same feeling that had drawn her to the portal, told her that she couldn't turn back now. When do we leave? She asked. Alden smiled slightly. Now. The journey to the mountains of Eliezer was unlike anything Emily had ever experienced. For days, they traveled through dense forests, across wide rivers, and over rolling hills. Alden led the way, his knowledge of the land and its dangers proving invaluable. Zara had given them a small crystal that glowed faintly whenever they were on the right path. As they traveled, Emily and Alden began to talk more. She learned that Alden had been a warrior since he was a boy, trained to protect his people from the dangers of the wild lands. He was serious and focused, but there was a gentleness to him that Emily hadn't expected. One evening, as they sat by the campfire, Emily asked, "Why do you care so much about finding the heart of time?" Alden stared into the flames for a moment before answering. My family. They were lost in a battle many years ago. I was the only one who survived. Since then, I've dedicated my life to protecting others. If the worlds collapse, there won't be anyone left to protect. Emily nodded, understanding more than she expected. She had lost her own father when she was younger, and though the pain had dulled over time, it had never fully disappeared. I'm sorry, she said softly. Alden looked at her, his expression softening. Thank you. They continued their journey the next day, the mountains of Eliezer growing closer with each step. But as they drew near, the landscape began to change. The once green fields turned gray and barren, and the air grew colder. As Emily and Alden approached the base of the mountains of Eliezer, the air became thick with an eerie stillness. The trees here were twisted, their branches gnarled and reaching out like skeletal hands. No bird sang, and even the wind seemed reluctant to pass through the desolate landscape. We're close, Alden said, gripping the hilt of his sword tightly. But we must be cautious. The mountains are guarded, Emily frowned. Guarded by what? Alden's face darkened. Creatures of shadow. They were once human, like us, but the imbalance between the worlds has corrupted them. They're drawn to the heart of time's power and will do anything to stop us from reaching it. Emily's heart raced. She had already seen strange and magical things in Alora, but the idea of facing shadow creatures made her stomach turn. Still, there was no turning back now. Together, they began the steep ascent into the mountains. The path was narrow and jagged, with sharp rocks jutting out at odd angles. Emily had to watch her every step to avoid slipping. Alden moved with ease, his body well practiced in navigating such terrain. Every now and then, he would glance back to check on her. The higher they climbed, the colder it became. Emily shivered and pulled her cloak tighter around her shoulders. The clouds above had grown thick and dark, casting long, ominous shadows over the landscape. Suddenly, a low growl echoed from the rocks ahead. Emily froze, her heart thudding in her chest. From the shadows emerged a figure, tall, thin, and cloaked in darkness. Its eyes glowed a sickly yellow, and its movements were unnatural, like a puppet pulled by invisible strings. Alden unsheathed his sword and stepped in front of Emily. "Stay behind me," he warned, his voice low and steady. The creature hissed, its twisted form lunging toward them. Alden swung his sword, the blade slicing through the air with deadly precision. But the creature was fast, too fast. It dodged the strike and disappeared into the shadows again. Emily's breath came in short gasps as she scanned the rocks around them. "Where did it go?" she whispered. Alden's eyes darted from side to side. "It's toying with us." "Stay close." Before Emily could respond, the creature reappeared, this time behind them. It lunged toward Emily, its claw-like hands reaching for her. She barely had time to react before Alden leaped between them, his sword connecting with the creature's arm. A high-pitched screech filled the air as the creature recoiled, black smoke hissing from the wound, but instead of retreating, more creatures began to emerge from the shadows. Dozens of them, all with glowing eyes and twisted, unnatural bodies. "We can't fight them all," Emily shouted, panic rising in her throat. Alden gritted his teeth. "No. But we can outrun them. Follow me." Without hesitation, Alden grabbed Emily's hand and pulled her down a narrow path that veered off the main trail. The creatures screeched in pursuit, their clawed feet scraping against the rocks. The path twisted and turned, leading them deeper into the mountains. Emily's lungs burned, and her legs ached from the effort of running, but she didn't dare slow down. She could hear the creatures behind them, their snarls growing louder with every step. Suddenly, Alden came to an abrupt stop. Emily nearly collided with him. "What is it?" she gasped, trying to catch her breath. Alden pointed ahead. There, Emily followed his gaze and saw an opening in the mountainside, a dark cave, barely visible in the dim light. "Inside," Alden ordered. "Hurry!" They dashed into the cave just as the first of the creatures reached the entrance. Alden turned and slashed at the closest one, driving it back. The creature snarled in frustration, but it didn't follow them inside. Instead, it and the others lingered at the mouth of the cave, hissing and pacing. "They won't come in here," Alden said, panting as he sheathed his sword. "Why not?" Emily asked. Her voice shaky. Alden glanced around the cave, his expression thoughtful. "This place. It's old. Sacred, maybe. They fear it." Emily took a deep breath and leaned against the cool stone wall, her heart still pounding. "What now?" Alden's eyes scanned the cave's interior. "We rest. Then we keep going. The heart of time is near, I can feel it." the cave stretched deeper into the mountain than they expected. After a short rest, Emily and Alden ventured further in, using a small torch Alden carried in his pack to light their way. The air was damp and cold, and the sound of dripping water echoed through the cavern. As they walked, Emily felt a strange sensation tugging at her chest, a pull. As if something was calling her deeper into the cave. "Do you feel that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Alden nodded. "It's the heart of time. We're close." The path eventually opened up into a large chamber. The walls were lined with ancient carvings, depicting scenes of two worlds, one filled with light, the other with darkness, connected by a swirling vortex. At the center of the chamber was a pedestal, and on top of it sat a glowing crystal, pulsing with a soft, rhythmic light. "The heart of time," Alden breathed, stepping forward. Emily felt a strange mix of awe and fear as she stared at the crystal. It was beautiful, but there was something ominous about it too, as if it held a power far greater than anyone could truly understand. As Alden reached for the crystal, the ground beneath them rumbled. The walls of the chamber began to shake, and cracks spread through the stone floor. "We need to take it and go," Emily shouted, panic rising in her chest. But before Alden could grab the heart of time, a deep voice echoed through the chamber. "You do not belong here." Emily's blood ran cold. From the shadows of the chamber, a figure emerged, tall, cloaked in darkness, but with eyes that glowed like fire. It wasn't one of the shadow creatures they had encountered before. This being was something else, something ancient and powerful. Alden drew his sword, but the figure didn't flinch. "You seek the heart of time," the figure said, its voice deep and resonant. "But it is not yours to take. We need it," Alden said, his voice steady despite the fear Emily could see in his eyes. "Without it, both of our worlds will collapse." The figure stepped closer, and Emily could feel the air grow colder. "The heart of time cannot be taken by force. It must be earned." Emily swallowed hard. "What do we have to do?" The figure's eyes glowed brighter. "You must prove that you are worthy. Only those who understand the true nature of time can wield its power." Alden tightened his grip on his sword. "And how do we prove that?" The figure raised a hand, and the chamber filled with a blinding light. When the light faded, Emily and Alden found themselves standing in a strange, dreamlike world. Time seemed to move differently here, moments stretched and twisted, and the landscape shifted like a mirage. "You must navigate the labyrinth of time," the figure's voice echoed around them. "Find the truth, or be lost forever." The world around them was a maze of swirling paths, each one twisting and changing as they walked. The sky was filled with shifting stars, and the ground beneath their feet seemed to pulse with energy. "We can't stay here for long," Alden said, his voice tense. "This place is a trap. It's meant to confuse us." Emily nodded, her eyes scanning the strange landscape. "What are we looking for?" "The truth," Alden said. "We need to understand what the heart of time really is." They moved through the maze cautiously, taking turns when the paths split and avoiding dead ends. But no matter how far they walked, the landscape continued to change, and the exit remained elusive. As they wandered, Emily began to feel a strange sensation, a pull, similar to what she had felt in the cave. "I think we're being guided," she said, stopping to look at Alden. "Guided?" Alden asked. "Yes," Emily said slowly. "It's like time itself is trying to show us something." She closed her eyes and focused on the feeling, letting it guide her steps. Alden followed close behind, trusting her instincts. Eventually, they reached a clearing in the maze, where a glowing pool of water lay still and undisturbed. Above the pool hovered an image, a vision of two worlds, just like the carvings in the cave, but this time they were whole, connected by a shimmering thread of light. The heart of time doesn't just balance our worlds. Emily whispered, realization dawning on her. It connects them. Time flows between both worlds, and if we take the heart, we'll sever that connection. Alden stared at the vision, his expression serious. Then what do? We can't take the heart of time, Emily said. We need to restore it, to repair the balance, not steal it. The figure's voice echoed around them once again. You have found the truth. Back in her own world, Emily felt both exhilarated and disoriented. The familiar sights and sounds of the city enveloped her, yet everything seemed different. The colors were brighter, the air felt fresher, and the people around her seemed to bustle with a renewed energy she hadn't noticed before. As she walked through the park, she found herself reminiscing about Alden and Zara, the strange creatures of shadow, and the heart of time. The memories flooded back vividly, each moment filled with adventure, danger, and unexpected friendships. She smiled to herself, feeling grateful for the experiences that had changed her forever. Emily returned to her university classes, but the mundane routine felt different now. She couldn't focus as she once had, her mind drifted to thoughts of Alora. She began to doodle in the margins of her notebooks, sketching images of the glowing portal, the ancient carvings, and Alden's determined face. One afternoon, while sitting in a cafe with her friends, Emily noticed something unusual in her surroundings. A flicker of light caught her attention, much like the one that had drawn her to the portal in the park. She glanced up and saw a small, shimmering orb hovering just above her table. Did you see that? Emily asked her friends, her heart racing. See what? Her friend Sarah replied, looking puzzled. Emily pointed, but the orb had vanished, leaving her feeling uneasy. She shook her head, convincing herself it was just her imagination. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that the portal wasn't truly gone. Days turned into weeks, but Emily's mind remained occupied with thoughts of Alora. One evening, as she was studying in her room, she heard a soft knock at her window. Startled, she walked over and opened it, revealing a small, delicate bird perched on the sill. In its beak was a tiny rolled parchment. Carefully, Emily took the parchment and unrolled it. Written in elegant script was a message. Emily, guardian of the heart of time, you are invited to return. The balance is fragile, and we need your help once more. Emily's heart raced. This was an invitation from Zara. She had felt it in her soul. There was still work to be done. Without hesitation, she gathered her things, took a deep breath, and made her way to the park. The portal appeared as she reached the grove, shimmering like a dream. She stepped through, excitement bubbling inside her. On the other side, the familiar sights of Alora welcomed her back. However, something felt off. The skies were darker than she remembered, and a sense of unease filled the air. As she walked toward the village, she noticed that the once vibrant landscape now bore signs of distress. When she reached Zara's home, she found the door ajar. Inside, the shelves that had once brimmed with books and artifacts now looked sparse and neglected. Zara appeared, her face drawn and weary. Emily. You've returned. Zara exclaimed, her eyes lighting up momentarily before dimming again. But we are in grave danger. What's happened? Emily asked, concern flooding her voice. The balance we restored is still fragile, Zara explained. But there are those who seek to control the heart of time for their own purposes. A dark sorcerer named Varos has risen, determined to seize its power. He has the ability to open the portals at will, allowing creatures of darkness to spill into our world. A shiver ran down Emily's spine. What can we do? We need to find Varos before he gathers enough power to challenge the heart of time. He resides in the Shadow Keep, a fortress deep within the mountains. Emily's resolve hardened. Let's gather allies. We can't face Varos alone. Zara nodded, a hint of hope returning to her eyes. Alden will be at the front lines with his warriors. We must travel to the Northern Territory and rally them. They set out immediately, traveling through the familiar yet altered landscapes of Althora. Emily felt the weight of her responsibility growing with each step. As they approached the Northern Territory, the landscape became harsher. The trees were twisted, and the ground was uneven. Emily's mind raced with thoughts of how to convince the warriors to join them. Upon reaching the encampment, they found Alden training his troops. His eyes lit up when he saw Emily. But the smile quickly faded when he noticed the urgency in her expression. Emily, you've returned just in time. We're preparing for battle, but we need more warriors, Alden said. Zara stepped forward. Varos poses a great threat. We need to unite all of Althora against him. Alden's face grew serious. We can gather more forces, but time is not on our side. We must act quickly. The news of Varos's return spread quickly, and soon, warriors from all corners of Althora arrived. They gathered in the Northern Territory, ready to prepare for battle. Emily stood before them, her heart pounding. We all have something to lose if we don't unite against Varos. Together, we can protect our world and the heart of time. Cheers erupted from the crowd, their spirits lifted by her words. Alden stepped forward. We will prepare for a march to the Shadow Keep at dawn. We must strike before Varos gains more power. As night fell, Emily couldn't shake the feeling of dread settling in her stomach. The enormity of what lay ahead weighed heavily on her. She found Alden sitting alone by the campfire, staring into the flames. Are you okay? She asked softly. Alden looked up, his expression troubled. I worry about the cost of this battle. Lives will be lost, and I cannot bear the thought of losing anyone. Emily sat beside him. We will do everything we can to protect each other. We have to believe in our strength together. Alden nodded, though the worry didn't leave his eyes. You have a bravery in you, Emily. I admire that. Thank you, Alden. I've learned so much from you, she replied, feeling warmth spread in her chest. The bond they had formed over their journey was more profound than she had realized. At dawn, the warriors prepared for the march. Clad in armor, they gathered their weapons and supplies. United by a common purpose. Emily stood at the front alongside Alden and Zara, her heart pounding with anticipation. As they moved toward the Shadow Keep, the path grew darker, and the air thickened with tension. Emily felt the energy of the warriors around her, fear mixed with determination. They were ready to fight for their world. After hours of marching, they reached the foot of the ominous fortress. The Shadow Keep loomed above them, its walls black and imposing. Varos's power radiated from within, and a deep rumble echoed through the ground. This is it, Alden said, his voice steady. We must be prepared for anything. Zara stepped forward, raising her hands. Listen to me. Remember what we fight for, our homes, our families, and each other. Together, we will face whatever awaits us. With a rallying cry, the warriors surged forward, storming the gates of the Shadow Keep. The moment they entered, chaos erupted. Creatures of darkness surged from the shadows, attacking fiercely. Emily found herself at the center of the chaos, adrenaline coursing through her veins. She fought alongside Alden, using every bit of training she had received. As they battled, she caught glimpses of Zara weaving spells, summoning light to fend off the darkness. Alden and Emily fought valiantly, pushing through the waves of shadow creatures. They made their way deeper into the fortress, determined to confront Varos and end his reign of terror. At last, they reached the throne room, where Varos awaited them. He sat upon a darkened throne, shrouded in shadows. His eyes glowed like embers, piercing through the dim light. "You dare to challenge me?" he sneered, his voice echoing ominously. "Your reign of darkness ends today." Alden shouted, stepping forward with his sword raised. Varos laughed, a sound that sent chills down Emily's spine. "You think you can defeat me? I hold the power of the heart of time." Emily stepped beside Alden, her heart racing. "You don't understand the heart of time. It doesn't belong to you." With a wave of his hand, Varro summoned shadows that lashed out at them. Alden and Emily fought back, dodging and weaving, their movements in sync. The air crackled with energy as they pressed forward, but Varos was powerful. He conjured waves of dark magic that threatened to engulf them. Just when it seemed they were overwhelmed, Zara appeared, her hands glowing with a brilliant light. "Together." She shouted, urging them to focus their energy. Emily felt a surge of power within her. She reached for Alden's hand, and together they drew on the strength of their bond and the warriors around them, with a powerful shout. They unleashed a wave of light that clashed with Varos's darkness. The room illuminated with blinding brilliance as their combined forces collided. As the years rolled by, Althora thrived under the guardianship of Emily and her allies. The connection between their worlds brought forth a new era of peace and prosperity. However, as they celebrated their victories, whispers of unrest began to stir in the shadows. One crisp autumn day, Emily was tending to her garden, a mix of flowers from both worlds, when a familiar shimmer caught her eye. A portal began to form in the air above her, crackling with energy. Instinctively, she stepped back, heart racing. Zara emerged from the portal, her expression grave. "Emily. We need to talk. There's been a disturbance." Emily's stomach dropped. "What kind of disturbance?" "Creatures from the Shadow Realm have been appearing at the borders of Althora. They seem different, stronger and more coordinated than before." Emily felt a chill run down her spine. "Varos is gone. Who is leading them?" Zara shook her head, her brows furrowed with concern. "I don't know yet, but we need to investigate. We cannot allow another threat to rise." Emily quickly gathered Alden and the other guardians. They convened in the ancient council chamber, surrounded by the flickering glow of crystals that pulsed with the heart of time's energy. "We must form a new alliance," Alden declared, pacing the room. "If we're to combat this new threat, we need to gather information and unite the warriors of Althora. Zara, can you sense where the disturbances are strongest?" Emily asked. Zara closed her eyes, concentrating. "There's a concentration of energy at the eastern woods. That's where we should start." The Guardians agreed to split their forces, sending teams to investigate the eastern woods while keeping watch over the borders. Emily and Alden decided to lead a small group into the heart of the woods, where they could confront any lurking dangers directly. As they ventured deeper into the eastern woods, the atmosphere changed. The air thickened with tension, and shadows danced among the trees. Emily could feel the pulse of magic around them, an ominous sign that something was very wrong. "Stay alert," Alden whispered, gripping his sword tightly. "We don't know what we'll encounter." They pressed on, navigating through twisted trees and dense underbrush. After hours of searching, they stumbled upon a clearing that revealed a massive stone altar surrounded by dark creatures. Their eyes glowed with a menacing light, and they moved in synchronized patterns as if commanded by an unseen force. Emily felt a sense of dread. This must be where they're gathering strength. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, a tall, cloaked being with piercing blue eyes that seemed to absorb the light around them. "Welcome, guardians," it said, its voice smooth and chilling. "I am Lyriel, the new master of the Shadow Realm." "Lyriel?" Alden stepped forward, fury in his eyes. "What do you want?" "I seek power and dominion over both realms," Lyriel replied, an unsettling smile creeping across their lips. "With the heart of time under my control, I can reshape existence itself." Emily felt her heart race. "You will never control the heart of time. We will protect it." "Protect it?" Lyriel laughed, the sound echoing through the woods. "You misunderstand. The heart is weak without its true guardian. You're merely a fleeting spark of hope." Without warning, Lyriel raised their arms, summoning the creatures to attack. Shadows lunged at Emily and her companions, and the clearing erupted into chaos. Alden swung his sword, striking down the first wave of creatures, while Emily focused her energy, summoning the magic of the heart of time, Zara. Emily called, hoping her friend would arrive in time to assist them. With a burst of light, Zara emerged from the shadows, her hands glowing with powerful spells. "I sense the disturbance. We have to push them back." The guardians formed a line, fighting side by side. Emily channeled her energy into radiant blasts that tore through the dark creatures. With Zara's spells and Alden's swordsmanship, they held their ground, but Lyriel watched, calculating and unfazed. "Is this the best you can do?" Lyriel taunted, raising their hand to call forth more shadows. "You're fighting a losing battle." Just then, Emily felt a surge of determination. "We need to focus our energy on Lyriel. If we can weaken them, the creatures will falter." Alden nodded, "On my mark. We strike together." With a deep breath, Emily closed her eyes, feeling the magic of the heart of time coursing through her. She summoned her strength, channeling it into a single, focused beam of light. "Now!" Alden shouted. They unleashed their combined power toward Lyriel. The beam struck true, illuminating the clearing and momentarily blinding everyone. The shadows recoiled, and Lyriel staggered back, a look of shock on their face. With Lyriel distracted, the guardians pressed their advantage. Zara weaved powerful spells, binding the dark creatures, while Alden charged forward, striking with precision. Emily focused her energy, ready to strike a final blow, but Lyriel, recovering quickly, summoned the shadows again, creating a protective barrier around themselves. "Fools! You think you can defeat me? I am more powerful than you can imagine." The clearing darkened, shadows swirling ominously around Lyriel. Emily could feel the darkness creeping in, threatening to snuff out the light. In that moment, she remembered the heart of time. The true essence of their power was not just in their individual strengths, but in their unity, together. Emily shouted. "We must combine our powers and break through." The guardians rallied, each of them channeling their magic and energy into one focused beam. With a cry of determination, they launched their collective strength at Lyriel's barrier. The impact sent shockwaves through the clearing, and the dark barrier shattered. Lyriel screamed in fury, the shadows retreating in fear. With their power combined, the guardians pressed forward, their hearts unified. The shadows faltered, and Lyriel began to dissolve into the very darkness they commanded. "You may have won this time, but the shadows will never cease to exist. They are a part of this world." With one final burst of light, Lyriel vanished, leaving behind only a lingering darkness that faded into the air. The clearing fell silent, the echoes of battle fading into a peaceful stillness. breathing heavily, Emily and the guardians gathered together, their relief palpable. "Is it over?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. "For now," Alden replied, wiping sweat from his brow. "But we must remain vigilant. Lyriel's threat may have been neutralized, but the shadows will always find a way to return." Zara nodded. "We must strengthen our defenses and educate the people of Althora about the darkness that lingers beyond our borders." In the aftermath of the battle, the Guardians returned to the council chamber, where they discussed how to prepare for future threats. They established training programs to teach the citizens of Althora about the magic of the Heart of Time and how to combat darkness. Emily felt a sense of purpose in her role as a guardian. She organized workshops, bringing together people from different villages, fostering a sense of unity and community. One evening, as she stood overlooking the valley, Alden joined her. "You've done a remarkable job bringing everyone together." Emily smiled, feeling a sense of fulfillment. "We all have a part to play in protecting our world. It's not just about fighting, it's about understanding and preparing for what's to come." As they watched the sun set, casting golden rays over the land, Alden turned to her. "You've become a true leader, Emily. The Heart of Time chose wisely." "Thank you, Alden," Emily said, her heart swelling with pride. "But it's all of us together that make the difference." Just when things seemed to settle, an unexpected visitor arrived at the council chamber. A tall figure with silvery hair and bright blue robes stepped forward, their presence commanding attention. "I am Alora, envoy from the kingdom of Lumina," the figure introduced themselves. "I have come to seek your counsel and offer assistance." Emily felt a mixture of curiosity and caution. "What brings you here, Alora?" "There are whispers of dark forces gathering beyond your borders. We have seen the signs, and I believe that the Shadow Realm is not the only threat you face. A greater darkness looms, one that could consume both our worlds." Zara exchanged a worried glance with Emily. "What do you know of this darkness?" Alora stepped forward, revealing a glowing crystal pendant that pulsated with energy. "This is the Lightstone, a relic of Lumina. It holds the power to illuminate the shadows. I believe it is time for our realms to unite and confront this darkness together." As Alora shared her knowledge of the looming threat, the Guardians listened intently. She spoke of ancient prophecies and a dark sorceress known as Selene, who sought to harness the powers of both the Heart of Time and the Lightstone to plunge. With peace reigning over Althora and Lumina, Emily found a new rhythm in her life as a guardian of time. Each day was filled with training, teaching, and strengthening the bonds between their two worlds. Yet, as she gazed out over the vibrant landscape, she felt a familiar stirring in her heart, a yearning for adventure and discovery. One afternoon, while exploring the ancient library in the castle, Emily stumbled upon a dusty tome hidden behind the shelves. Its pages were filled with tales of legendary heroes, lost artifacts, and distant realms that had yet to be discovered. One story caught her eye, the legend of the Celestial Compass, an artifact said to guide its bearer to other dimensions. This could be incredible. She murmured to herself, excitement bubbling within her. If the Celestial Compass truly exists, it could lead us to realms that need our help, or even to knowledge that could protect us from future threats. That evening, Emily gathered Alden, Zara, and Alora in the council chamber to share her discovery. "I found a legend about the Celestial Compass. It's supposed to reveal hidden dimensions and guide us to places in need." Zara leaned forward, her eyes bright with interest. "If we can find it, we could learn about new magics and strategies to fortify our defenses." Alden smiled, his adventurous spirit igniting. "It's worth investigating. But first, We need to decipher the clues in the tome. Where do we begin? Alora studied the pages carefully. The compass is said to be located in the luminary caverns, a place known for its treacherous paths and shimmering crystals. We'll need to prepare for a journey unlike any we've faced before. The Guardians spent the next few days gathering supplies and mapping out their route. They invited some of their trusted warriors to join them, ensuring they had a well-rounded team for the journey ahead. The day of departure arrived, and Emily felt a mix of excitement and nerves as they set out towards the luminary caverns. The journey took them through lush forests and across shimmering rivers, and with each step, the anticipation built within her. As they reached the entrance of the caverns, a chill swept through the air. The cavern's mouth loomed before them, dark and foreboding, yet glimmers of light shone from within. "Stay close," Alden instructed, gripping his sword. "We don't know what lies ahead." With torches in hand, the Guardians entered the cavern. The walls sparkled with crystals that illuminated their path, casting eerie shadows that danced around them. As they ventured deeper, they heard the distant sound of water dripping and the echo of their footsteps. "Look." Zara pointed ahead, where a large chamber opened up before them. At its center stood a pedestal, and atop it glimmered an ornate compass, its needle spinning wildly. Emily stepped forward, her heart racing. This must be it. The celestial compass. As she approached, the compass's needle stopped spinning and pointed directly at her. "What does it mean?" she asked, glancing back at her companions. Alora studied the compass carefully. "It's responding to you. Perhaps it recognizes your connection to the heart of time." Tentatively, Emily reached out and touched the compass. In that instant, a rush of energy surged through her. Images flashed before her eyes, vibrant worlds filled with breathtaking landscapes, bustling cities, and creatures she had never seen before. "The compass, it shows visions of other realms," Emily gasped. "But it also feels like it's warning me of danger." Suddenly, the cavern began to shake, and the walls trembled as dark shadows emerged from the depths, swirling around them. "We must leave," Alden shouted. They dashed back toward the entrance, but the shadows grew more aggressive, blocking their escape. Emily held the compass tightly, feeling its energy pulsing in her hand. "Together." she shouted. "We can't let the shadows overpower us." With a surge of determination, the Guardians formed a circle, their combined magic fueling Emily's connection to the celestial compass. The shadows writhed in response, trying to pull them apart. "Focus on the light," Zara cried, channeling her energy toward Emily. Alden and Alora joined in, their powers merging as they concentrated on the light emanating from the compass. The shadows recoiled, but Emily felt a weight pressing down on them. "I need more energy," she shouted, pushing herself to tap into the heart of time's essence. As she concentrated, the compass glowed brighter, illuminating the cavern with a blinding light. The shadows shrieked, their forms dissipating under the brilliance. With one final burst of energy, the Guardians unleashed a wave of light that shattered the shadows completely. The cavern returned to silence, the threat vanquished, leaving only the shimmering compass behind. Breathing heavily, Emily looked at her friends. "We did it." "But why were the shadows here?" Alora picked up the compass, inspecting it closely. "I believe it was a test, a manifestation of the darkness that lingers. It senses your strength and challenges you to grow." Emily nodded, understanding the gravity of their situation. "We need to use the compass to explore new realms and strengthen our bonds. But we must also be prepared for what we may face." With the celestial compass in their possession, the Guardians returned to Althora, filled with hope and determination. They gathered the council to share their findings and prepare for their upcoming adventures. Over the next few weeks, they experimented with the compass, each time revealing glimpses of new worlds. They encountered realms of wonder and magic but also darkness and danger. With each journey, they learned and grew stronger, forging alliances with creatures and beings they met along the way. Emily found herself in awe of the possibilities. Each realm held unique lessons, new allies, and powerful magic. She knew that their adventures would not only enrich their own worlds but also prepare them for the challenges that lay ahead. One evening, after returning from a particularly enlightening journey, Emily felt a disturbance in the air. The compass pulsed ominously, drawing her attention. She gathered her friends in the council chamber. "Something feels off," she said, glancing at the compass. "It's almost as if it's warning us again." Just then, a figure emerged from the shadows of the chamber, a cloaked stranger with dark hair and piercing eyes. "Guardians of Time," the figure said, their voice smooth and alluring. "I am Kalen, a traveler between realms. I come with a message." Emily stepped forward, wary but curious. "What message do you bring?" Kalen's eyes glinted with intrigue. "The darkness you vanquished was but a fragment. A greater force stirs in the void, a force that seeks to reclaim what you have taken. They are gathering strength, and soon they will come for the heart of time." The gravity of Kalen's words hung in the air, sending chills down Emily's spine. "What can we do?" she asked, her heart racing. "How do we stop it?" Kalen approached the celestial compass, studying it closely. "You must find the nexus points, places where the barriers between realms are thin. If you can harness their energy, you can strengthen your defenses and prepare for the coming storm." Zara crossed her arms, deep in thought. "Where do we find these nexus points?" Kalen looked at each guardian in turn. "The compass can guide you, but be wary. Each point holds its own challenges and guardians. You will need to prove your worth to gain their strength." "We'll do whatever it takes," Alden said firmly. "We'll protect our worlds." With renewed purpose, the Guardians prepared for their next quest. They studied the compass, planning their route to the first nexus point, located deep in the heart of the Whispering Woods, a place said to be alive with ancient magic. As they set out, Emily felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. The journey ahead was filled with unknowns, but she knew they had each other's backs. As they traveled, Emily reflected on how far she had come since her arrival in Alora. The bond she had forged and the lessons she had learned had transformed her into a true guardian, protector of not only Alora but also the interconnected realms. Upon entering the Whispering Woods, the air crackled with energy. The trees seemed to whisper secrets, their leaves shimmering with magic. Emily led the way, guided by the compass as it pulsed in her hand. "Stay alert," she reminded her friends, aware that this realm was known for its mischievous spirits and magical beings. Suddenly, ethereal figures emerged from the trees, glowing wisps of light that danced around them. "Guardians, why do you enter our sacred woods?" one of the spirits asked, its voice melodic and echoing. "We seek the nexus point," Emily replied, stepping forward. "We wish to strengthen our bond with the realms and protect against the darkness that approaches." The spirits exchanged glances, their expressions thoughtful. "To access the nexus point, you must demonstrate your unity and purpose. Only then will you be deemed." The Wanderer's Tale, Chapter 1, The unexpected journey begins. Once upon a time, in a small village nestled between towering mountains and a wide, glittering river, there lived a man named Daniel. Daniel was an ordinary fellow. He worked as a carpenter, repairing roofs and building furniture for the people in the village. He enjoyed his quiet, simple life. His days consisted of crafting, taking walks along the river, and chatting with the townsfolk in the evening. One crisp autumn morning, as Daniel was mending an old wooden cart, a stranger approached him. The man was tall, with a scraggly beard and deep-set eyes that seemed to carry the weight of the world. His clothes were tattered, and his boots were covered in mud, suggesting that he had traveled a long distance. Without a word, the stranger handed Daniel a small, intricately carved wooden box. The box was no larger than a loaf of bread, but it was heavy, as if filled with something important. Curious, Daniel looked up at the man, but before he could ask any questions, the stranger spoke in a deep, gravelly voice. "Take this box to the city of Alpha. It is of great importance. The fate of many depends on it." Daniel was taken aback. "I'm just a carpenter," he protested. "I've never even been beyond the village borders." The stranger shook his head slowly. "You are the one chosen for this task. Do not question it." And with that, the man turned and walked away, disappearing into the mist that had begun to rise from the river. Confused and a little frightened, Daniel looked down at the box in his hands. What could possibly be inside? Why had he been chosen to deliver it? And why Althor, a city so far away that most villagers only spoke of it in legends? That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. The box sat on his small wooden table, staring back at him like an unsolved mystery. His mind raced with questions, but no answers came. By dawn, he had made up his mind. He would take the box to Althor, even though the journey would be long and dangerous. He didn't know what lay ahead, but something inside him, perhaps a sense of duty or a curiosity he had never felt before, urged him forward. Chapter 2, Into the Wilderness. The next morning, Daniel packed a small bag. He took a loaf of bread, some dried meat, a water flask, and his trusted knife. Slinging the bag over his shoulder and clutching the mysterious box tightly, he set off. His first steps outside the village felt surreal. The path ahead led into a thick forest, which marked the boundary between his familiar world and the unknown. As Daniel ventured deeper into the woods, the trees grew taller and closer together, blocking out most of the sunlight. The air was damp, and the smell of moss and wet earth filled his nostrils. Occasionally, he heard the rustling of small animals in the underbrush, but otherwise, it was eerily quiet. He had never been in this part of the forest before, and it was easy to feel lost among the towering trees. For hours, he walked, not entirely sure if he was heading in the right direction. Just as he began to wonder if he had made a terrible mistake, he heard a rustling sound behind him. He spun around, his heart pounding in his chest. From the shadows emerged a small, shaggy creature. It stood on two legs, its fur a deep brown, and its eyes twinkled mischievously. "Lost, are we?" the creature asked in a high-pitched voice. Daniel blinked in surprise. He had never seen anything like it before. What are you?" Daniel stammered. The creature laughed, a sound like tinkling bells. "Names are not important in these woods," it said. "But if you must call me something, call me Bingle." "Bingle?" Daniel repeated, still unsure of what he was dealing with. "Do you live here?" The creature nodded. "I live everywhere and nowhere. But you, my friend, seem to be far from home. Where are you headed?" Daniel hesitated. Could he trust this strange being? But something about Bingle's twinkling eyes made him feel at ease. "I'm on my way to Althor," he said, "to deliver a box." Bingle's eyes widened. "Althor? That's quite the journey for a simple carpenter. What's in the box?" "I don't know," Daniel admitted. "A stranger gave it to me and told me to deliver it." He said it was important. Bingle tapped a furry finger against his chin, thinking. Important, you say? Well, I'm heading that way myself. Perhaps we can travel together. These woods can be tricky for someone unfamiliar with them. Grateful for the company, Daniel agreed. And so, the two unlikely companions set off together through the forest. As they walked, Bingle entertained Daniel with stories of the forest, tales of magical creatures, hidden treasures, and ancient legends that few outside the woods had ever heard. Chapter 3, The Enchanted River. After 2 days of traveling, Daniel and Bingle reached a wide river. Its waters were a shimmering blue, almost too vibrant to be real. This is the Enchanted River, Bingle explained. It's said that anyone who drinks from it gains visions of the future. Daniel stared at the water, feeling a strange pull toward it. Could it really show him the future? He crouched down by the riverbank and scooped up some water in his hands. It was cool and refreshing, but as soon as he drank it, his vision blurred. The world around him seemed to dissolve, and in its place, he saw flashes of things he didn't understand. He saw a tall, dark tower standing alone in a barren wasteland. Inside the tower, a glowing figure held the box, the same box he was carrying. The figure whispered something, but Daniel couldn't hear the words. Then, the vision shifted, and he saw himself standing at the gates of Althor, the box still in his hands. Just as suddenly as the vision began, it ended, and Daniel found himself back by the river, gasping for breath. Bingle was watching him closely. You saw something, didn't you? Daniel nodded, still trying to make sense of it. I saw a tower. And someone holding this box. Bingle's expression grew serious. The Tower of Shadows, he muttered under his breath. I had hoped we wouldn't have to deal with that. Chapter 4, Secrets of the Tower. The words Tower of Shadows sent a chill through Daniel's spine. Bingle didn't elaborate at first, but Daniel sensed that whatever the tower was, it wasn't a place anyone visited lightly. Bingle, Daniel asked cautiously, what is the Tower of Shadows? And why would the box be there? Bingle sighed, sitting down on a rock near the riverbank. His usual playful demeanor had faded. The Tower of Shadows is a place few have ever seen. Fewer still have returned from it. Some say it was built by ancient beings, others say it appeared out of nowhere one day, as if summoned by dark magic. Whatever the truth is, it's a place of power, and that power is dangerous. Why would someone in Althor need me to take the box there? Daniel wondered aloud. Bingle shook his head. I don't know. But if your vision is connected to the tower, we must be cautious. Powerful forces are at play, Daniel, and you're now tangled in their web. They sat in silence for a moment, the river's soft gurgling the only sound. Daniel stared down at the box again. It was simple and unassuming on the outside, but after the vision and Bingle's words, it felt much heavier in his hands. We should keep moving, Bingle said, rising to his feet and brushing the dirt from his fur. The road to Althor is long, and the sooner we reach it, the better. Daniel nodded and stood, glancing at the river one last time before they resumed their journey. The enchanted river soon faded into the background, replaced by dense trees and the occasional call of distant birds. As they walked, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that something, or someone, was watching them. Chapter 5, The Watchers in the Woods. By late afternoon, the forest had grown darker, even though the sun was still high. Shadows seemed to stretch longer, and the trees loomed closer, as if they were leaning in, observing the two travelers. Daniel could hear the crackling of twigs behind him, though whenever he turned around, he saw nothing. Bingle, do you feel that? Daniel whispered, glancing around nervously. Like we're being watched. The little creature stopped and sniffed the air. His nose twitched, and his eyes narrowed. "We are," Bingle said in a hushed tone. "The Watchers." Daniel's heart began to race. The Watchers? What are they? "No one knows exactly what they are," Bingle replied quietly, scanning the trees. "Some say they are spirits of the forest, others say they are the eyes of the tower itself, sent out to watch those who come near. They don't usually attack, but we must be careful." A sudden rustling sound came from the bushes nearby. And Daniel froze. His hand instinctively went to the knife at his side, though he wasn't sure how much good it would do against mysterious forest spirits. For a moment, everything was still. Then, from the shadows emerged a figure, tall, cloaked, and faceless. The figure's body seemed to blend into the darkness, as though it was made of the shadows themselves. Bingle stepped in front of Daniel, his small body tense but ready. "State your purpose, Watcher," Bingle called out, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. The Watcher stood silently for a long moment, its presence unnerving. Then, in a low, echoing voice, it spoke. "The one who carries the box must beware." Daniel clenched the box tighter. "Beware of what?" "The tower calls to you," the Watcher said, its words hanging in the air like a cold mist. "But not all who enter its shadow leave unscathed. Turn back, or face the consequences." Daniel's mouth went dry. He looked at Bingle, but the creature's face was unreadable. "I can't turn back," Daniel finally said, his voice firm despite his fear. "I have a duty." The Watcher's cloak seemed to shift, as though the shadows within were swirling. "Then know this, the box is not what it seems. What it holds can change the world." Before Daniel could ask more, the figure dissolved into the darkness, leaving nothing but silence behind. Chapter 6, The Desert of Bones. After the encounter with the Watcher, neither Daniel or Bingle spoke for a long time. They simply pressed on, the forest slowly giving way to rocky terrain. By evening, they reached the edge of the forest, where the landscape abruptly shifted to a barren desert. The ground was cracked and dry, and the wind howled across the empty expanse, carrying with it a fine dust that stung Daniel's eyes. "This is the Desert of Bones," Bingle said solemnly. "We must cross it to reach Alpha. But be warned, many have perished here. Lost to the sands or to the creatures that roam it." Daniel gazed out over the endless stretch of desert, feeling a knot of dread tighten in his stomach. Why is it called the Desert of Bones? Because those who don't make it across are never found, except for their bones, bleached white by the sun, Bingle replied grimly. "We'll need to keep moving, even at night. The heat during the day is too intense, and the creatures that roam the sands hunt at dusk." They waited until the sun had sunk below the horizon before setting out. The desert at night was eerily quiet, save for the occasional distant howl of some unknown beast. The stars overhead were bright, but offered little comfort as the cold night air bit at Daniel's skin. He kept the box close, feeling its weight more acutely now. Hours passed, and the flat expanse of the desert seemed to stretch on forever. As they walked, Daniel noticed strange shapes scattered across the sand, rocks, or so he thought at first. But as they drew closer, he realized they weren't rocks at all. They were bones, human bones. The wind whistled mournfully through the skeletal remains, as if the desert itself was whispering forgotten stories of those who had come before. Daniel shuddered but pressed on, determined not to let fear get the best of him. Then, just as the first light of dawn began to creep over the horizon, Daniel heard a sound, faint at first, but growing louder. A clicking noise, like the clattering of bones. He froze, turning toward the source of the sound. Out of the shadows emerged a figure, hunched and twisted, its body made entirely of bones. Its eyes, glowing pinpricks of light, locked onto Daniel and Bingle. Bingle drew a small blade from his side and hissed under his breath. "Bone walkers," he muttered. "Stay close to me." The bone walker moved quickly, its skeletal limbs rattling with each step. Daniel felt his heart race. He clutched the box tighter, unsure if he should run or fight. Before he could decide, more bone walkers emerged from the shadows, their clattering growing louder, surrounding them. "Whatever happens, do not drop that box," Bingle ordered, his voice sharp. "These creatures are drawn to it." Daniel swallowed hard and nodded, preparing himself for whatever was about to come next. The first bone walker lunged at Daniel with surprising speed, its bony fingers reaching out to grab him. In an instant, Bingle leapt into action, darting in front of Daniel and slashing at the creature's legs with his small but sharp blade. The bone walker let out a high-pitched screech as it stumbled back, its leg bones crumbling to dust, but there were more, many more. Chapter 7, Battle in the Sand. Daniel's pulse quickened as more bone walkers encircled them, their glowing eyes flickering like the last embers of a dying fire. Their bones clicked and rattled with every step, a haunting sound that seemed to grow louder with each passing second. Bingle fought fiercely, darting between the creatures, his blade flashing in the moonlight as he severed their limbs. But for every bone walker that crumbled to dust, two more emerged from the shadows, their skeletal hands reaching for the box Daniel held. "Keep moving," Bingle shouted over his shoulder. "They won't stop coming." Daniel's mind raced, adrenaline pumping through his veins. He knew he had to do something, but he felt trapped. The bone walkers were relentless, their bony fingers clawing at him, their hollow eye sockets fixed on the box. Instinctively, he swung his knife at one of the creatures, its brittle bones shattering under the force of his strike. But as soon as it fell, another took its place. There was no end to them. Suddenly, one of the bone walkers managed to grab hold of Daniel's arm, its cold, skeletal grip tightening around his wrist. Daniel cried out, struggling to free himself, but the creature's strength was unnerving. It pulled him toward it, its other hand reaching for the box. "No!" Daniel yelled, clutching the box with all his might. Bingle saw the struggle and rushed to Daniel's side, slicing through the bone walker's arm with a swift, clean strike. The creature shrieked and collapsed into a pile of bones, but Daniel was left shaken. "We have to get out of here," Daniel shouted, breathing heavily. "There's too many of them." Bingle nodded, his fur matted with dust. "There's a ridge up ahead," he said, pointing to a distant rocky outcrop rising from the desert sands. "If we can reach it, we might be able to lose them in the rocks." With renewed determination, Daniel and Bingle sprinted toward the ridge. The bone walkers followed, their clattering footsteps echoing behind them, but Daniel could feel the distance growing. The creatures were fast, but they were also clumsy, and the shifting sands slowed their pursuit. As they reached the base of the ridge, Bingle climbed up nimbly, while Daniel scrambled behind him, using his free hand to pull himself up. The rocky surface was jagged and steep, but Daniel didn't stop. The sound of the bone walkers grew fainter as they ascended, the creatures struggling to follow. At last, they reached a narrow ledge near the top of the ridge. From there, Daniel could see the bone walkers milling around below, their skeletal bodies unable to climb the steep rocks. For the moment, they were safe. Daniel collapsed against the rock face, his chest heaving with exhaustion. Bingle sat beside him, also catching his breath. The box, still clutched tightly in Daniel's hands, felt heavier than ever. that was close," Daniel panted, wiping sweat from his brow. "Too close." Bingle agreed. He glanced down at the bone walkers, who were slowly disappearing back into the desert. "They're drawn to the box. Whatever's inside, it has power, enough to stir even the dead." Daniel looked at the box, his curiosity and dread growing. What could possibly be inside that's worth all this trouble? Bingle shook his head. "I don't know. But if the bone walkers wanted it, then it's more dangerous than we thought." They sat in silence for a while, watching the sun slowly rise over the desert, casting long shadows across the dunes. The danger had passed, but Daniel knew it was only temporary. Whatever awaited them in Alther, and whatever was inside the box, was bound to be even more perilous than what they had just faced. Chapter 8, The City of Alther. 2 more days passed as Daniel and Bingle continued their trek across the desert. The nights were bitterly cold, and the days were scorching, but eventually, the desert gave way to rolling hills and grassy plains. And there, on the horizon, Daniel finally saw it, the fabled city of Alther. Alther was unlike anything Daniel had ever imagined. Towering stone walls surrounded the city, their surfaces etched with ancient runes that glowed faintly in the sunlight. Tall spires and domes rose above the walls, gleaming in gold and silver, while narrow bridges connected them like threads in a vast tapestry. The gates were massive, made of iron and adorned with intricate carvings of mythical beasts. Daniel felt a strange mix of awe and apprehension as they approached the city. He had heard stories of Alther, stories of its wealth, its power, and its secrets. But now, standing at its gates, he realized that those stories barely scratched the surface. "Welcome to Alther," Bingle said quietly, his voice tinged with both admiration and caution. "It's a place of wonders, and of dangers." As they reached the gates, Daniel was surprised to find no guards. Instead, a large metal eye was embedded in the gate's center, its lid half closed as if it were asleep. Bingle walked up to the eye and rapped on the gate with the hilt of his blade. Immediately, the eye snapped open, revealing a swirling, glowing pupil that scanned Daniel and Bingle. A deep voice boomed from the gate, startling Daniel, "Who seeks entrance to Alther?" The voice demanded. "I am Daniel, a carpenter from the village of Eldern," Daniel said, trying to sound confident. "I have come to deliver a box." The eye narrowed suspiciously. "A box, you say?" Daniel held up the wooden box, feeling its weight shift slightly in his hands. The eye studied it for a long moment, its glowing pupil flickering. Finally, the gate began to creak open, the sound of grinding metal echoing through the air. "Enter," the voice said. "But be warned, Alther is not as it seems." With a sense of foreboding, Daniel and Bingle stepped through the gates and into the city. The streets of Alther were bustling with life. Merchants called out from their stalls, selling everything from exotic fruits to enchanted trinkets. People from all walks of life wandered the streets, nobles in fine robes, travelers from distant lands, and mysterious figures cloaked in shadow. But despite the vibrant energy of the city, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. "The Tower of Shadows," Bingle muttered as they walked through the crowded streets. "It's at the heart of this city. We'll need to find it." Daniel's eyes scanned the skyline, and sure enough, rising above the rest of the city, he saw a dark, looming tower. It was taller than any building he had ever seen, its surface black as obsidian, reflecting no light. There were no windows, no doors, just a monolithic structure that seemed to absorb everything around it. "Do we really have to go there?" Daniel asked, his voice trembling slightly. Bingle nodded. "That's where the box belongs. And whatever answers we seek will be found inside." As they made their way toward the tower, Daniel noticed more and more people watching them. Their gazes were intense, filled with suspicion or curiosity. Whispers followed them, though Daniel couldn't make out what was being said. When they finally reached the base of the Tower of Shadows, Daniel hesitated. The air around it was heavy, as if the tower itself was radiating a palpable sense of dread. "This is it," Bingle said quietly. "Are you ready?" Daniel swallowed hard, his fingers tightening around the box. "I don't think I'll ever be ready," he admitted. "But we've come this far. I have to see this through." With a deep breath, Daniel stepped forward, ready to face whatever awaited him inside the Tower of Shadows. Chapter 9, The Heart of Darkness. As they approached the base of the tower, a low hum filled the air. The structure seemed alive, vibrating with a faint energy that made the hairs on Daniel's arms stand on end. There was no visible entrance, no grand door to knock on, just smooth, black stone. Daniel's stomach tightened with unease. "How do we get in?" Daniel asked, glancing at Bingle, who appeared just as puzzled. Before Bingle could answer, the ground beneath them began to shift. The stones under their feet slid apart, revealing a spiraling staircase that descended deep into the earth. From below, a cold draft drifted upward, carrying with it the faint scent of damp stone and something else Daniel couldn't quite place, something metallic, almost like blood. "Well, I suppose that answers the question," Bingle said grimly. Chapter 9, The Heart of Darkness. Daniel stared down the spiraling staircase that had appeared beneath his feet. The cold draft that rose from the depths of the tower sent shivers through his body, but he knew he had no choice but to descend. The box in his hands felt heavier than ever, as if it were resisting what lay ahead. Chapter 9, The Heart of Darkness. Daniel stared down the spiraling staircase that had appeared beneath his feet. The cold draft that rose from the depths of the tower sent shivers through his body, but he knew he had no choice but to descend. The box in his hands felt heavier than ever, as if it were resisting what lay ahead. "Stay close," Bingle muttered, his usual bravado subdued by the eerie atmosphere. He hopped onto the first step, his small form disappearing into the shadows. With a deep breath, Daniel followed, gripping the box tightly as he descended into the unknown. The staircase spiraled downward for what felt like an eternity. The deeper they went, the colder the air became. And the light from above faded until they were enveloped in complete darkness. Daniel's heart pounded in his chest, his footsteps echoing off the stone walls. Every now and then, he would hear a faint whisper, but when he stopped to listen, it would disappear. Finally, after what seemed like hours, they reached the bottom. The staircase opened into a vast, circular chamber lit by a faint, eerie glow emanating from the walls. The light seemed to pulse, like a heartbeat, casting long shadows that danced across the floor. In the center of the chamber stood a pedestal made of the same black stone as the tower itself. It was empty. "This is it," Bingle whispered, his voice barely audible in the still air. "The heart of the tower." Daniel took a hesitant step forward, his eyes locked on the pedestal. "Do I put the box there?" Bingle nodded, but his eyes were filled with caution. "I think that's what it wants. But be ready for anything, Daniel. The Tower of Shadows doesn't give without taking something in return." Daniel swallowed hard, his hands trembling as he approached the pedestal. He placed the box on its surface, the wood creaking softly as it settled into place. For a moment, nothing happened. The silence was suffocating, and Daniel's heart raced as he waited for something, anything, to happen. Then, with a low rumble, the walls of the chamber began to shift. The faint light intensified, and the air grew thick with energy. The pedestal began to glow, and slowly, the box started to open on its own. Daniel held his breath as the lid lifted, revealing the contents inside. it was a key, but not just any key. The key was made of a strange, gleaming metal that seemed to ripple with power. Symbols were etched along its surface, symbols that Daniel couldn't read but somehow understood. They were ancient, powerful, and filled with meaning. As the key floated gently above the box, a deep voice filled the chamber, echoing from the very walls themselves, "You have brought the key, to unlock the shadows." Daniel's skin prickled. What does that mean? The voice ignored his question, continuing its ominous chant. The tower holds the secrets of the world. The key unlocks the heart. But beware, for knowledge comes with a price. The air around them began to hum, and suddenly, a doorway appeared in the far wall, tall, arched, and shimmering with an otherworldly light. It was as if the tower had opened a portal to somewhere beyond its walls, somewhere far more dangerous. Bingle stepped forward, his eyes wide. That's it. The inner sanctum of the tower. Daniel glanced at the doorway, then back at the key. The temptation to enter was overwhelming, but the warning from the watcher echoed in his mind. Not all who enter its shadow leave unscathed. Do we go through? Daniel asked, his voice wavering with uncertainty. Bingle hesitated, his small face etched with concern. If we do, there's no turning back. What lies beyond is beyond even my understanding. Daniel took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He had come this far, risked everything to deliver the box and uncover its secrets. He couldn't stop now, not when he was so close. "We have to," Daniel said, his voice steadier now. "Whatever is on the other side, it's the answer. We have to know." Bingle nodded, though Daniel could see the tension in his eyes. "Then let's go. But stay close." Together, they stepped toward the doorway, the light from the portal casting an ethereal glow on their faces. As they crossed the threshold, Daniel felt a sudden pull, like gravity shifting, and the world around them blurred. Chapter 10, The Realm Beyond, when the world came back into focus. Daniel and Bingle found themselves standing in a vast, open expanse. But it wasn't like anything Daniel had ever seen before. The sky above them was a swirling mass of dark clouds, shot through with streaks of lightning that never touched the ground. The landscape was a mix of jagged rocks and barren plains, stretching as far as the eye could see. In the distance, Daniel saw something strange, a colossal structure, towering over the horizon. It wasn't the Tower of Shadows. It was something far older, far more alien. Massive arches and spires twisted into impossible shapes, defying the laws of nature. "This isn't Althor," Daniel whispered, feeling the weight of the realm pressing down on him. "No," Bingle agreed, his voice hushed. "This is the Shadow Realm. The place where the tower draws its power." Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. The air here was thick, almost suffocating, and the shadows seemed to move of their own accord. Every step felt like walking through molasses, as though the very ground resisted their presence. "We need to find out why the box brought us here," Bingle said, scanning the horizon. "This place is dangerous, and the longer we stay, the more it will consume us." They walked through the desolate landscape, their footsteps echoing in the emptiness. As they moved closer to the colossal structure in the distance, Daniel noticed strange markings on the ground, symbols similar to the ones on the key. They seemed to pulse with a faint energy, guiding them forward. The structure loomed closer, and as they approached, Daniel could see that it wasn't just a building, it was a prison. Massive chains wrapped around its base, anchoring it to the ground, while dark energy crackled along its surface. "What is this place?" Daniel asked, his voice barely a whisper. Bingle's eyes narrowed as he studied the structure. This is where the tower keeps what it has stolen." Souls, knowledge, power, it's all locked away here. A sudden movement caught Daniel's eye. From the shadows, a figure emerged, tall, cloaked, and radiating a dark energy. It was unlike the Bone Walkers or the Watchers. This figure was something else, something far more dangerous. The Keeper of Shadows, Bingle said, his voice filled with dread. The Keeper glided toward them, its presence suffocating. "You have come to free the shadow," it said, its voice a low growl that reverberated through the air. "But do you understand what you are about to unleash?" Daniel's heart pounded in his chest. "We came to deliver the box," he said, holding it up. "We were told it holds the key." The Keeper's eyes, two glowing orbs of darkness, fixed on the key that hovered above the box. "The key unlocks the prison. But once opened, the shadow cannot be contained." Bingle stepped forward, his small body tense. "What is the shadow? What will it do if we release it?" The Keeper's voice grew darker, more ominous. "The shadow is knowledge. It is power. But it is also chaos. Once unleashed, it will consume everything in its path, starting with you." Daniel felt his grip on the box tighten. The temptation to unlock the prison was overwhelming, but the warnings rang loud in his ears. The shadow was dangerous. But it was also the answer he had been seeking. "What do we do, Bingle?" Daniel asked, his voice shaking. Bingle looked at him, his eyes filled with uncertainty. "This is your choice, Daniel. The key is yours. But know this, once you unlock the prison, there is no going back." Daniel stood at the crossroads of fate, the key in his hands, the future of the world hanging in the balance. Chapter 10, The Realm Beyond. Daniel stood frozen, his heart pounding in his chest, the weight of the key pressing down on his palm. The Keeper of Shadows loomed before him. Its dark presence almost unbearable. Bingle waited at his side, tense and silent. The air was thick with anticipation, as though the very fabric of reality held its breath. Daniel's mind raced. He had come so far, risked so much, and now he was standing on the edge of something far bigger than he had ever imagined. But the thought of walking away, of leaving this dark prison sealed, gnawed at him. The shadow held knowledge, truths beyond anything he could comprehend. Could he really turn his back on that? His fingers tightened around the key. "I have to know," Daniel whispered, more to himself than anyone else. "I have to see what's inside." Bingle's eyes flicked to the Keeper of Shadows, who watched them in eerie silence. "Daniel," Bingle warned, "there's still time to walk away. Once you open it, there's no undoing what's unleashed." Daniel swallowed hard. His pulse pounded in his ears, and his hand shook slightly as he raised the key. The symbols along its surface glowed brighter, as if they were responding to his decision. The key seemed alive in his hand, vibrating with raw energy. "I'm doing it," Daniel said, his voice stronger now. "We've come too far to turn back." With a deep breath, Daniel stepped toward the massive structure, the prison that towered before them. The key in his hand pulsed with a power that seemed to resonate with the very air around them. As he approached the massive chains that bound the prison, the Keeper of Shadows glided back, watching but making no move to stop him. The key slid into a lock that Daniel hadn't noticed before, an invisible mechanism within the stone itself. As the key turned, a deep, resonant click echoed through the ground. The chains rattled violently, and a dark, swirling energy began to seep from the cracks in the stone. The prison shuddered as if something deep within it was awakening. "Step back," Bingle urged, his voice tight with fear. Daniel stumbled back as the ground trembled beneath them. The air grew colder, sharper, as if the very essence of the realm was being drained. The chains snapped one by one, each breaking with a deafening crack that reverberated through the dark expanse. The structure split open, and from its depths, a shadowy figure emerged, a towering, formless mass of darkness. It twisted and writhed, its edges flickering like smoke, yet it was solid, menacing. The shadow had been freed. The Keeper of Shadows lowered its head as the dark entity rose into the sky. "It is done," it said quietly. "The shadow is no longer bound." Daniel felt a surge of energy rush through him, his body vibrating with the raw power of the shadow. The entity hovered above them, its presence oppressive and terrifying. The air around them shimmered as the shadow began to expand, its dark tendrils reaching out toward the horizon, consuming everything in its path. "What have I done?" Daniel whispered, watching in horror as the world around him started to warp under the influence of the shadow. The Keeper of Shadows turned its glowing eyes on Daniel. "You have unleashed knowledge," it said. "But knowledge is a weapon, and the shadow hungers." Bingle's small hand gripped Daniel's arm. "We need to get out of here, now," he said urgently, but Daniel couldn't move. His gaze was locked on the shadow as it twisted and grew, spreading across the barren landscape. It wasn't just destroying, it was absorbing, devouring everything in its path. And with each thing it consumed, it grew stronger, darker, more menacing. The ground beneath them began to crumble, the landscape itself buckling under the weight of the shadow. Daniel snapped out of his trance, adrenaline flooding his veins. "We have to go," he shouted, pulling Bingle with him as they sprinted back toward the portal that had brought them into this strange realm. But the portal was gone. Panic surged through Daniel as he looked around, searching for any way out. The shadow was closing in, its dark tendrils slithering across the ground, hungry and unstoppable. There was nowhere to run, no way to escape. "Bingle, what do we do?" Daniel yelled, his voice trembling with fear. Bingle's eyes darted around, but he had no answer. "I don't know. This wasn't supposed to happen." The shadow's presence was suffocating now, its darkness blotting out the sky, the land, everything. It was pure chaos, an ancient force beyond anything Daniel could have imagined. And it was coming for him. Suddenly, the ground beneath Daniel gave way, and he fell. He tumbled through the darkness, the shadow swirling around him, pulling him deeper into its depths. He tried to scream, but no sound came out. The world was dissolving, everything breaking apart, and then, silence. Chapter 11, The Shadow's Gift. When Daniel opened his eyes, he wasn't sure if he was still alive. The oppressive weight of the shadow was gone, but so was everything else. He found himself standing in a vast, featureless void, an expanse of nothingness that stretched endlessly in every direction. There was no light, no sound, just emptiness. He looked around, confused and disoriented. "Bingle?" He called out, but his voice was swallowed by the void. For a long moment, Daniel stood there, unsure of what to do. Then, a familiar voice broke the silence. "You have unlocked the shadow's prison." Daniel spun around and saw the Keeper of Shadows standing before him, its form now more distinct. More solid, as if the shadow's release had empowered it. "Where am I?" Daniel asked, his voice shaking. "You stand in the space between," the Keeper replied. "The shadow has consumed the realm you knew. But it has left you alive, for now." Daniel's mind raced, trying to make sense of what had happened. "What does it want from me?" he demanded. The Keeper's glowing eyes seemed to flicker. "The shadow offers you a choice. You have unlocked its prison, unleashed its power. Now, you can claim that power as your own." Daniel took a step back, his heart pounding. What are you talking about? The shadow holds the knowledge of worlds, of life, death, and everything in between, the keeper explained. But it is also chaos, destruction. It will consume all in its path unless you control it. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. Control it? How? The keeper extended a hand, and suddenly, the key appeared in Daniel's palm once more. But this time, it wasn't just a key. It was pulsing with energy, vibrating with the power of the shadow itself. You can wield the shadow's power, the keeper said. But it will come at a cost. Daniel stared at the key, feeling the immense power surging through it. He could feel the weight of the decision before him. If he took the shadow's power, he would be bound to it, forever changed. But if he refused, the shadow would continue to consume everything in its path, unstoppable. What's the cost? Daniel asked quietly. The keeper's voice was soft, almost sympathetic. You will no longer be who you were. The shadow will reshape you, make you its vessel. But you will have the power to reshape the world, or destroy it. Daniel's mind reeled. Could he really do it? Could he control something so dangerous, so chaotic? And even if he could, what kind of person would he become? But what choice did he have? If he didn't stop the shadow, it would devour everything. And if he didn't act now, there might not be another chance. With trembling hands, Daniel gripped the key tightly and made his decision. I accept. Chapter 12. The Shadow's Ascendant. The moment Daniel spoke the words, the key in his hand exploded with light, dark, swirling light that enveloped him completely. The void around him pulsed with energy as the shadow flowed into him, merging with his very essence. It was overwhelming, a flood of power so intense that Daniel thought he might be torn apart, but he wasn't. He endured. And slowly, the chaos settled. When the light faded, Daniel stood transformed. The void around him had disappeared, replaced by a new realm, a world shaped by the shadow's influence, but now under his control. The darkness still lingered, but it no longer consumed him. Instead, it obeyed him. The keeper of shadows bowed its head. You have become the shadow's master. The world is yours to command. Daniel took a deep breath, feeling the immense power coursing through him. He was no longer the simple carpenter from Eldern. He was something far more. He had the power to reshape reality, to bend the world to his will, but with that power came responsibility. Daniel looked out across the new world he had created. The shadow still pulsed within him, chaotic and dangerous, but he held it in check. He would wield its power, but he would not let it control him. He was the master of the shadow, and the future was his to shape. Thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. See you in the next video. Have a nice day.